Chapter 431. No matter how hard Gu Moyuan struggled, he was unable to resist. The thousand-hand sword Buddha's attack was so fierce that he almost couldn't catch his breath. He could already foresee how the spectators in the sky would talk about him. He wished he could commit suicide on the spot. But he really couldn't accept it. He didn't want to die. He was the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, and he still had much to show. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll pay. I'll pay." Zhou Xuanji's sword technique was exquisite, and his divine ability was quite strange. It was the first time he had encountered such an enemy. Damn it. He would definitely take revenge in the future. Zhou Xuanji stopped and laughed coldly, still not going to hand it over? Gu Moyuan immediately threw out earth core crystals, and Zhou Xuanji received them one by one. A half-bridge made of geocentric flame crystals appeared between the two. Geocentric crystals came one after another, and Zhou Xuanji's expression changed slightly. How many people did this kid rob? Within the demonic shadow, Gu Moyuan's expression was incomparably ugly. These were his painstaking efforts. After a while, Gu Moyuan no longer threw out more earth core crystals. He threw Zhou Xuanji a total of 2,231 earth core crystals. Zhou Xuanji took out the truth sword and stabbed it into his body. Anything else? Yes. Gu Moyuan's eyes widened in shock. Therefore, he threw out another 3,000 geocentric flame crystals. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. This guy was really rich. He continued to interrogate her. Gu Moyuan threw out another 1,000 geocentric crystals. After another round of interrogation, he tossed out another 2,000 geocentric crystals. Gu Moyuan was about to cry. Why couldn't he restrain himself from telling the truth? He looked at the truth sword with fear in his eyes. The outside world was in an uproar. A sword that could force people to tell the truth? Even someone as strong as Gu Moyuan couldn't resist? Finally, Zhou Xuanji obtained more than 13,600 earth core crystals from Gu Moyuan. He only let go after making sure that Gu Moyuan did not have any left. Gu Moyuan stood up with a complicated expression. His eyes were filled with anger and resentment. Zhou Xuanji could not bear to see this and comforted him, "Don't blame yourself. It's mainly because I'm too powerful. You are not my match." Puff, Gu Moyuan couldn't bear this injustice. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered all over the rubble. Zhou Xuanji smiled and waved his hand before leaving. Gu Moyuan sat paralyzed on the ground. The magic power in his body had already been exhausted. He was trying his best to calm himself down. As Zhou Xuanji left, he began to regain his rationality. Ji Xian of the Divine Cliff. If I don't take revenge for this, I'm not human. He gritted his teeth. He could not bear the thought of countless people mocking him in the outside world. Fortunately, he still had a chance. That bitch was stupid, she actually let him go. Just you wait, the winner of this Ascender assessment will be me. He clenched his fists and said firmly. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji continued to descend. After torturing Gu Moyuan, he was in a good mood. He finally had a clear understanding of his own strength. It should not be a problem for him to sweep across all golden immortals. Mo Yuha was definitely stronger, but if he used all his trump cards, it was not impossible for him to win. He hummed a tune as he flew quickly. Another 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Zhou Xuanji's earth core crystals exceeded 20,000. There were only a few freaks like Gu Moyuan. However, he had yet to meet Mo Yuha, so he wasn't sure if he had the most geocentric flame crystals. Until today, the number of ascenders had decreased drastically. It was difficult for Zhou Xuanji to encounter any more ascenders. He scanned with his divine sense and realized that his divine sense could only reach 1,000 meters away. It seemed like the mysterious tribulation crater was not as simple as it seemed. There was something blocking divine sense. Zhou Xuanji stopped and looked down. He saw a vast ocean of lava below him. The fiery light shone on the cave walls, which was extremely majestic. A scorching aura wafted toward him. If an ordinary person were to get close, they would be turned into ashes. Countless bubbles rose and fell on the magma ocean, bursting from time to time. Zhou Xuanji looked around and saw countless geocentric flame crystals floating on the ocean. However, with his cultivation, he did not dare to get close. Far away, someone was flying swiftly and continuously plucking geocentric flame crystals from the surface of the lava ocean. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and sized him up. This person wore a dark purple robe and a jade crown. 2 strands of white hair fell down his cheeks, and his handsome face was covered in sweat. Powerful cultivation. Zhou Xuanji could not see through him but felt that this person was more powerful than Gu Moyuan. There was only one possibility. Mo Yuha. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and thought about whether he should attack Mo Yuha. He was not afraid of Mo Yuha but only wanted to maximize his benefits. Forget it. Let him collect for a while. Zhou Xuanji lay down on the ground and began to rest while absorbing the spiritual qi underground. Time ticked by. There were more than 10 cultivators who ascended above the lava ocean. They were 10,000 meters apart from each other and did not disturb each other. They were all thinking of ways to pluck geocentric flame crystals. Only Zhou Xuanji did not move. Even so, most people's attention was focused on him. A first-class great emperor was too much of a gimmick. Even Mo Yuha could not compete with him. That guy is trying to reap the benefits. He doesn't even take Mo Yuha seriously. He's too arrogant. He's a first-class great emperor. Didn't you see that Gu Moyuan was like a dog in his hands? Shoo, be careful not to be heard. If that's the case, he might be the final winner. No, I think he will die from his arrogance. Hearing the discussions of the others, sovereign demon sects Guanhong and the Buddha ghost sect's people were furious. Especially the Buddha ghost sect, who wanted to tear Zhou Xuanji into pieces. Gu Moyuan was defeated so miserably before him that they could not wait to leave. Guanhong was worried about Mo Yuha. He heard about Zhou Xuanji. The sovereign demon sect lord once said that it would be great if he could rope Zhou Xuanji in. This was enough to show how ridiculously talented Zhou Xuanji was. He did not want Mo Yuha to lose. After all, he was assisting Mo Yuha and hoped that Mo Yuha could inherit the sect lord's position in the future. Emissary Li Qing was definitely the one who was in the most pleasant mood. When others came to strike up a conversation with him, his nostrils flared up. On the heavenly hall's side, an old man flew to Sage Yutian's side and said telepathically, "Your Majesty, the news has been leaked." Sage Yutian nodded and mumbled, "This emperor does not want to attack you either. If this gets out, the heavenly hall will not get involved in this anymore." Although he did not like Zhou Xuanji, he hated how those powerful cultivators oppressed the heavenly hall and used it as a tool. Now that Zhou Xuanji had ascended and disappeared in the northern wilderness region, it was the best time for the heavenly hall to retreat. He began to look forward to it suddenly. Facing the encirclement of so many powerful cultivators, what would the divine cliff do? In the Taoist temple at the top of the sky, Li Zhangqi came up to Taichu Yudao again and said respectfully, "Senior apprentice brother, the heavenly hall really spread the news about Zhou Xuanji. Next, the Dao Heaven sect will become the center of the storm." He was filled with disdain toward the heavenly hall. Since ancient times, many geniuses were born in the northern wilderness region. But it was a pity that the heavenly hall could not keep them. The biggest reason was that Sage Yutian was not powerful enough. He could never reach the peak. With his back facing Li Zhangqi, Taichu Yudao smiled and said, "It's okay. Let them come." Chapter 432. Zhou Xuanji did not know that his identity had been exposed, and a large number of enemies were on their way. He lay on the stone pillar, quietly waiting for time to pass. In the blink of an eye. There were only 5 days left until the end of the Ascender assessment. Zhou Xuanji had already made a name for himself in the mysterious tribulation crater. After all, he did not kill anyone but only robbed other ascenders. The news of him robbing Gu Moyuan spread like wildfire, causing him to stand shoulder to shoulder with Mo Yuha. All the ascenders were looking forward to the battle between him and Mo Yuha. It would be best if the two strongest experts perished together. However, Zhou Xuanji and Demon Desire River minded their own business and did not attack each other. This was especially so for Zhou Xuanji, who just lay there without moving. The ascenders all understood his intentions. This bastard wanted to rob the other ascenders of their geocentric crystals. Wu Mingyi and a group of Divine Cliff disciples gathered near Zhou Xuanji. Today, the Divine Cliff only had 9 people left. They could only rely on Zhou Xuanji's might to survive. Zhou Xuanji had long since noticed their approach, but he did not mind. Gu Moyuan did not attack the other ascenders. He was also frantically plundering the geocentric flame crystals. The magma sea was incomparably silent, and the atmosphere was heavy. Everyone was vigilant of their surroundings. If he was careless and was shot down, he would die without a burial. There were already some pitiful creatures who fell down before, and not even a trace of their soul was left. On the 4th last day, Gu Moyuan could no longer sit still, and he began to slaughter the ascenders. Who wouldn't want to fight a little longer if they could survive until today? As a result, many ascenders died tragically because they didn't even have the time to take out their identity tokens. On the 3rd last day, there were less than 200 ascenders left in the profound tribulation crater. Most of them were hiding underground, not daring to approach the magma ocean. In the outside world, many of the eliminated ascenders returned to their respective sects dejectedly. Although they wanted to leave, they had no choice but to give the Tao Heaven sect face. They gritted their teeth and continued to watch. At the same time, they also wanted to know who would win. On this day, Mo Yuha also began to attack the other ascendants. He and Gu Moyuan turned into cruel hunters and chased after the ascenders. Zhou Xuanji was already motionless. He did not go down to plunder the earth core crystal but just laid there as though he was sleeping. Even though there was no one on the surface of the magma sea, he did not move. Everyone knew what he was trying to do. The more he thought so, the more he looked forward to it. Was a Grade 1 Great Emperor really that powerful? A mere 5th Revolution Golden Immortal could be invincible among Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals? The 2nd last day, Mo Yuha returned to the surface of the lava and stopped on a stone pillar. From here, he could see Zhou Xuanji. The two of them were less than a kilometer apart. This distance was already very close for them. The corners of Mo Yuha's mouth curled upwards, revealing a disdainful smile as he sat down cross-legged. He did not know Zhou Xuanji's true identity, but he knew that this person had defeated Gu Moyuan, so he was not in a hurry to act. Because he didn't even put Gu Moyuan in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji sent a telepathic message to Wu Mingyi and the others, advising them to stay far away. It would be best if they could crush their identity medallions now. Apart from these people, the other ascenders were all 7th Revolution Golden Immortals and above. Zhou Xuanji was very curious. It had only been 500 years since they ascended, so how did they reach such a stage? One thing was very clear, these ascenders were all from the major forces. With Zhou Xuanji's reminder, the other Divine Cliff disciples decided to retreat as a group. They flew close to the ground and waited for the exam to end. However, they had forgotten that Gu Moyuan was still up there. On the magma sea, only Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha were left. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and asked, "Hey, how many earth core crystals do you have?" "I have 20,000. Mo Yuha glanced at him and said indifferently, "Just a little more than 1,000,000. "A little more than 1,000,000. Zhou Xuanji smiled. What a fat sheep. Seeing his smile, the outside world was in an uproar. This first-class great emperor was really arrogant. How powerful was he to be so unbridled? Guanhong frowned tightly. The more she looked at Zhou Xuanji, the the more displeased she was. Sage Yutian was silent, but his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. If Zhou Xuanji could be used by the Heavenly Hall, perhaps the Heavenly Hall could soar. Li Zhangqi stood beside emissary Li Qing and chatted cheerfully with him about Zhou Xuanji. The other forces cursed in their hearts. What right did this guy have to become an elder of the Tao Heaven sect? He was too shameless. When Zhou Xuanji gets first place and becomes a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal 10 years later, you will have one more Void Extreme Immortal. How enviable, Li Zhangqi chuckled as though he was a good brother to emissary Li Qing. Han Shuzi sent emissary Li Qing to lead Zhou Xuanji, which meant that the two of them had a good relationship. Li Zhangqi naturally wanted to rope emissary Li Qing in. Emissary Li Qing shook his head and smiled humbly. But he enjoyed it in his heart. Continue to brag. Don't stop. Time continued to pass. The last day. Zhou Xuanji stood up slowly, and everyone on the clouds quieted down. The final battle was finally here. Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha were definitely the most powerful two in this year's Ascender examination. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and the Nine-Flame Chimera Demon Sword appeared in Zhou Xuanji's hands. Numerous legendary swords appeared around him one after another. Activating their divine energy, the swords shone brilliantly. The surface of his body quickly turned golden and was surrounded by heavenly lightning. A purple Tai Chi diagram with 9 swords appeared on his forehead. Boom! The surrounding cavern walls shook violently, and even the lava lake rippled. Mo Yuha opened his eyes in surprise. He knew that Zhou Xuanji was powerful, but he did not expect his aura to be so powerful. Was this guy really a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal? He got up and unleashed his own aura. The two completely different auras clashed, and the impact caused the inverted stone spikes to fall down. Zhou Xuanji smiled lightly and said, "If I defeat you, I will have more than 1,000,000 pieces." Easy. Mo Yuha raised his right hand, and a blood-red halberd appeared in his hand. A layer of black armor covered his robe, and his aura grew tremendously like a demon god. Easy. I will let you die. Mo Yuha stared at Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile. His smile was filled with murderous intent. Their eyes met, and both of them looked equally conceited. Boom! The two attacked almost at the same time, and the stone pillar under their feet crumbled instantly. Clang! The sword and halberd clashed. Zhou Xuanji swung both swords at the same time with extreme speed. Mo Yuha held the halberd with both hands, and his speed was just as fast as Zhou Xuanji's. Numerous legendary swords flew toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji activated the 10,000 sword dragon incantation straightaway and controlled hundreds of legendary swords to attack Mo Yuha. He then activated the Emperor's Way 1,000-hand sword Buddha and gathered the power of the heavens and earth. A golden Buddha that was hundreds of meters tall appeared quickly, and he entered it. Mo Yuha frowned. He could sense that Zhou Xuanji's magic energy and strength had grown tremendously. He did not panic. A wave of demonic qi exploded from his body and turned into countless tentacles to defend against the legendary swords around him. His eyes turned red. He held the halberd with both hands and thrust it forward with all his might. The demonic qi transformed into a black dragon and wrapped around the halberd. The dragon clashed with the 1,000-hand sword Buddha and pushed it back. Chapter 433. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha spread its 1,000 arms, each holding a sword, and slashed at Mo Yuha. More than 100 divine swords surrounded Mo Yuha with dragon-shaped sword qi. At first glance, it seemed like an army was surrounding Mo Yuha, their auras powerful and tyrannical. Although Mo Yuha was being suppressed, he still had the strength to defend. Compared to Gu Moyuan, Mo Yuha was more than 10 times stronger. Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned. If he observed closely, he would find that the 1,000-hand sword Buddha was showing signs of collapsing. This fellow's demonic aura is so strong. At this rate, the 1,000-hand sword Buddha would explode before he could harm Mo Yuha. He cursed in his heart. Was this guy wearing a reverse armor? He immediately dispelled the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Following that, he unleashed the ancestral dragon divine sword and turned it into a 5-clawed golden dragon. An earth-shaking explosion resounded. The unstoppable 5-clawed golden dragon swallowed Mo Yuha in one gulp and rushed along the surface of the lava, setting off 2 waves of scorching heat. Mo Yuha gritted his teeth in the mouth of the 5-clawed golden dragon. He looked around in surprise and found that the 5-clawed golden dragon was formed from sword chi. What a mighty sword technique! At this moment, a sword light shot out from the 5-clawed golden dragon's body. It was Zhou Xuanji. His understanding of the ancestral dragon sword had reached its peak. While stabilizing the ancestral dragon, he could launch another attack on the enemy. The 9 sword souls appeared behind him, and he quickly rushed to Mo Yuha's side. His 2 swords danced in unison, and the sword souls attacked one after another. Mo Yuha was proficient in some kind of powerful halberd technique, which was extremely domineering. He blocked all of Zhou Xuanji's attacks. Although he looked calm, he was complaining in his heart. The web between his thumb and forefinger had already been torn, and it was extremely painful. Most importantly, he was using some kind of secret technique that allowed him to maintain his strongest state, which would speed up the consumption of magic power. Even so, he could only fight Zhou Xuanji to a draw. He couldn't understand. How could a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal have such strength? They did not know that Zhou Xuanji had 2 god-slaying legendary swords in his hands, and he had the power of the heavens and the earth as well as the Tianxia map. With all sorts of great serendipity gathered on him, how could he not be powerful? The 5-clawed golden dragon broke through the cave wall and wreaked havoc underground. The outside world was already in an uproar. Zhou Xuanji can really fight evenly with Mo Yuha. What sword technique is that? He's too strong. If he were to become a real god, how powerful would he be? Mo Yuha has the potential to become the next sect master of the Sovereign Devil sect. Why do I feel that he has become mediocre? It's not that his talent is mediocre. It's that Zhou Xuanji is too powerful. The Divine Cliff has picked up a treasure. The various factions were all discussing this, and even the Dao Heaven sect's disciples were gasping in shock. Especially the female disciples, their eyes were shining like stars. Zhou Xuanji was handsome and had extraordinary talent. Which woman could resist his charm? Emissary Li Qing smiled and sighed in his heart. A first-class great emperor was indeed extremely powerful. No wonder Zhou Xuanji was ranked 12th on the great emperor's stele. The top 20 were all indomitable geniuses. The Dao Heaven sect master, Taichu Yudao, was only ranked 18th. Even when he was 18, he had once been the strongest in the Center God province. It was hard to imagine what heights Zhou Xuanji would reach in the future. In the Taoist temple, Taichu Yudao sat on a cattail hassock and looked at the sky outside. He stroked his long beard and smiled like a kind grandpa, without the aura of a powerful cultivator. He laughed softly and said, "The World Buddha art and Tianxia map are indeed worthy. No wonder Divine Lord Ji wanted them so much." His eyes were immersed in reminiscence as he mumbled, "Little brother, you are indeed talented to create such a creation. You should not die, and I will not let the tragedy of your past happen again." Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha's battle was reflected in his eyes, and they looked so tiny. Boom! 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 The 5-clawed golden dragon dashed underground while Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha fought intensely inside the dragon's body. Mo Yuha realized that his magic energy was being sucked away by his opponent. No! I must leave this place. Mo Yuha gritted his teeth. With a sway of his body, he disappeared and came to the head of the 5-clawed golden dragon. He raised his halberd and smashed it down. Bomb! The 1,000 meters long 5-clawed golden dragon exploded immediately and turned into countless sparks. Sword lights flashed, and 2 sword souls shot toward Mo Yuha. Mo Yuha blocked instinctively, but his face was still cut open. Blood spurted out, and his jade crown fell off. His white hair was disheveled. His eyes turned cold and sharp, and a murderous intent burst forth from him. Zhou Xuanji had really angered him. He raised his halberd high, and demonic qi gathered above his head like a sea of clouds. As the halberd swung down, countless vengeful demons charged out from the demonic sea of clouds and charged toward Zhou Xuanji with unstoppable force. Zhou Xuanji smiled with disdain. He raised the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and summoned it. With the Extreme Abyss summoned, countless evil spirits charged out and clashed with Mo Yuha's vengeful demon army. Boom! The underground mountain wall far away shattered suddenly, and Gu Moyuan charged over with his saber. A maniacal smile appeared on his face as he targeted Zhou Xuanji first. He was extremely fast. Like a ray of blood-red light, he could not be seen with the naked eye. Zhou Xuanji slashed back. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Gu Moyuan could only sense an unstoppable force crashing toward him. His body was almost crushed into pieces. Next, he flew backward while vomiting blood and disappeared into the billowing dust. Zhou Xuanji controlled the 26 legendary swords in his mind and got into formation. Hades' God-slaying formation. He could not defeat Mo Yuha, so he could only look for other helpers. Before he came, he had asked emissary Li Qing. Such a summoning formation could be used. As long as the formation was set up by one's own power and not with the help of a formation scroll prepared beforehand, it was not against the rules. He charged toward Mo Yuha again. Mo Yuha noticed the Hades God-slaying formation. He wanted to stop Zhou Xuanji, but Zhou Xuanji was too difficult to deal with. He was shocked in his heart. How does this guy control his swords? Don't tell me those swords have sword spirits. No, there's no aura of a spirit. He's controlling them. Multitasking? Far more than that. Zhou Xuanji did not know how shocked Mo Yuha was, because Mo Yuha had always been at ease, which made Zhou Xuanji feel that Mo Yuha's magic energy was boundless and difficult to defeat. Roar! A horrifying roar came from the Hades God-slaying formation. From the black hole, numerous black tails emerged and danced wildly. A horrifying aura descended and filled the broken underground space. Mo Yuha looked over with a frown. Fear could be seen in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised in his heart. When he used the Hades God-slaying formation, he failed many times, which almost made him lose confidence in the formation. This aura, it's very powerful. It was too late to stop the Hades God-slaying formation now. However, Gu Moyuan charged at him again. His hair was disheveled and he was extremely furious. He slashed at the Hades God-slaying formation with his saber. Ji Xian. If I can't win, don't even think about winning. The saber chi swept across like a blood moon, majestic and domineering. The black tails in the black hole disappeared suddenly. A black beam of light shot out and dispersed the blood moon saber chi before dashing toward Gu Moyuan. Gu Moyuan could not dodge in time and was struck by the black beam. Chapter 434. Gu Moyuan raised his head and screamed miserably. His body trembled as a layer of black light enveloped his body. Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha stopped at the same time and looked at him with astonishment. Even Zhou Xuanji did not expect this to happen. Under their gazes, Gu Moyuan quickly demonized. Demonic qi engulfed him, and he turned into a devil with 18 black tails. His eyes shone with a bloody light, and it was impossible to distinguish his true appearance. They could only see his silhouette, and he even let out a low roar. Immediately after, Gu Moyuan directly attacked Mo Yuha. Mo Yuha's eyes widened. Zhou Xuanji, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised. It seemed that this demon was not as simple as it seemed. It could possess a body to fight. He immediately followed, joining forces with Gu Moyuan to fight Mo Yuha. After being possessed by the demon, Gu Moyuan's power increased by several folds. He was not any weaker than Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha. How could Mo Yuha block it? He was instantly at a disadvantage. Zhou Xuanji switched between different sword techniques, which were incredibly profound. Gu Moyuan, on the other hand, used brute force to beat Mo Yuha until his hands were numb. This scene shocked everyone in the outside world. What's that? Is this cheating? Use the power of evil and unorthodox Daos. Others set up their own formation. Can you? The son of the demonic emperor bloodline is so pathetic. I feel like he's just a clown before Zhou Xuanji and the demon desire river. Is there anything this guy doesn't know? Mo Yuha is finished. Hearing the discussions in the surroundings, the sovereign demon Sex Guanhong clenched her fists, her expression extremely gloomy. He wished he could kill everyone around him. Unfortunately, he did not have such a powerful ability. If this continued, Mo Yuha would definitely lose. The Buddha ghost Sec's anger was no less than his. In fact, it was even greater. After all, Mo Yuha was fighting 1 against 2. Even if he lost, it wouldn't be shameful. But Gu Moyuan, they cursed at Zhou Xuanji's shamelessness in their hearts. Bang! Gu Moyuan stomped on Mo Yuha, breaking his sternum. Fresh blood spurted from his mouth as his body smashed through layers of rocks, rushing towards the ground. Zhou Xuanji followed up with another attack, beating the dog while it was down. In less than 3 breaths of time, Mo Yuha's halberd left his hand. His face contorted and he almost fainted. Facing Zhou Xuanji and Gu Moyuan's barrage of attacks, he could not withstand it at all. Too strong. His heart was filled with unprecedented grievance and unwillingness. At this moment, he finally understood what Gu Moyuan had felt before. The sword light flashed. The lickable sword, the soft velvety sword, the dumb sword, the world fool sword, the great compassion sword, and the truth sword pierced into his chest one after another. The combination of various special abilities became the straw that broke the camel's back, causing Mo Yuha to completely lose the ability to fight. Zhou Xuanji used universal attraction and sucked him in front of him. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss was pressed against his throat. You lost. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, living up to his initial arrogance. He was as calm as if he had defeated a passerby. Mo Yuha struggled to open his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kill me." After being defeated to such an extent, he no longer had the face to continue living. Zhou Xuanji said, "Hand over the earth core crystal. There's no need to seek death. There's still a long way to go. Moreover, if you die like this, will you be able to face the sovereign demon sect behind you? Life is long. It's impossible for everything to be smooth sailing and to be undefeated. A powerful cultivator is not invincible, but he will only be knocked down and not defeated. It's nothing if his body is defeated, but if his heart is defeated, then he is really dead." He said it casually, which made Mo Yuha fall into silence. The spectators outside were shocked by his words. If these words were said in another situation, it would only make people scoff. But given the current situation, Zhou Xuanji could have killed Mo Yuha to prevent himself from making enemies. But he did not. Even the sovereign demon Sec's side was stunned. Li Zhangqi sighed in amazement. This guy has the spirit of a powerful cultivator and the demeanor of a grandmaster. Forgiving was harder than killing. Zhou Xuanji asked Gu Moyuan to take out his earth core crystals. There were a total of 1.2 million. He said with a smile, "See, not only you, but he also took out everything. A man must be able to let go. We will fight again in the future. You are really powerful. Of course, you are far inferior to me." Mo Yuha took a deep breath and handed over all his earth core crystals. Zhou Xuanji accepted them quickly. With more than 2 million earth core crystals, Zhou Xuanji was already the final winner. After that, Zhou Xuanji let go of Mo Yuha. This guy was already severely injured and could not recover within a day. As for Gu Moyuan, he would recover naturally after the demons retreated. Zhou Xuanji did not want to kill them. First, they had no enmity with each other. Second, killing them would only bring him endless trouble. He had a bolder idea. To make him a sword slave. At the thought of this, he said to Mo Yuha, "You don't have to blame yourself. I have the potential of a first-class great emperor. No one will look down on you even if you lose to me. Moreover, everyone outside saw the battle just now. They will only praise you." Since things had come to this, his identity must have been exposed. He decided to self-destruct. Mo Yuha opened his eyes wide and cried out in shock, "First-class great emperor. You are Zhou Xuanji?" Zhou Xuanji was definitely the most famous person in the past 100 years. Not only in the Center God province, but also in the other God provinces. No wonder, Mo Yuha felt better suddenly. He was only a second-class great emperor after all. He sighed and fell into silence. Zhou Xuanji flew to the side and waited for the examination to end. An hour later, the evil demons retreated, and Gu Moyuan woke up. He looked at Zhou Xuanji in fear and did not dare to find trouble with him anymore. He realized that his earth core crystals were no longer there, so he immediately turned around to collect them. Mo Yuha gave up. To him, other than the first place, everything else was a loss. The second place was the one who failed the most. Until the next morning. The Ascender examination was over. All the Ascenders in the mysterious tribulation crater felt a mighty force wrap around them and teleported them out. Zhou Xuanji appeared, and the sky shook. Cheers sounded out. Zhou Xuanji is mighty. Awesome, first-class great emperor. Too powerful. A first-class great emperor indeed. He completely crushed the entire field. Not only is he powerful and talented, but his spirit is also admirable. This person is worth learning from our disciples. Should we call him Zhou Xuanji or Ji Xian? The other Ascenders who survived until the end all turned to look at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment. He is Zhou Xuanji. The Divine Cliff's disciples were the most astonished, especially Wu Mingyi. His jaw almost dropped to the ground. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and sighed in his heart. Humph. Zhou Xuanji, you dare to protect the northern wilderness humans. Today, you will die in the mysterious tribulation crater. A cold snort came, covering all the cheers and silencing the heavens and earth. The sea of clouds in the east opened up, and a pair of gigantic eyes appeared behind it. This pair of gigantic eyes stared at Zhou Xuanji fixedly. Murderous intent filled the heavens and earth, which made everyone shiver. Emissary Li Qing came up to Zhou Xuanji instantly and cried out with a deep voice, "Who are you?" Zhou Xuanji is a core disciple of the Divine Cliff. How can you kill him just because you want to? Chapter 435. Whoosh, above the clouds, everyone turned to look at the giant eye in the sky. This was the Dao Heaven sect, and Zhou Xuanji was the Divine Cliff's treasure. Who would dare to come here to kill him? Zhou Xuanji also looked over. It was not the first time he had seen such large eyes, but he still could not recognize them. To dare to rush here to kill him, it was definitely not due to jealousy. There should really be a grudge between them. But in Zhou Xuanji's eyes, apart from the Heavenly Hall and Xiao Hongjun, who else could he have enmity with? There was another possibility. That was Divine Lord Ji. However, Emissary Li Qing had once told him that Divine Lord Ji was extremely mysterious and never showed himself. The world only knew his name but never saw him. Divine Cliff, this kid carries too much sin. If you really want to protect him, then you'll be making an enemy out of the Center God province. The pair of huge eyes stared at Emissary Li Qing and shouted in a deep voice. Hearing this, the various sects above the cloud sea were all amazed. Become enemies with the Center God province? Who the hell are you? Such arrogance. Zhou Xuanji and Emissary Li Qing were speechless. Was this person brainless? The surrounding ascenders all retreated far away from Zhou Xuanji. Bang! A bolt of lightning suddenly came from the horizon, intending to shatter Zhou Xuanji's soul. Emissary Li Qing quickly struck out with his palm, and a giant green palm appeared out of thin air. It was like a mountain that stood in front of the two of them, blocking Ji Lei. Lightning coiled around the giant green palm, causing cracks to appear all over the surface of the palm, and it instantly collapsed. Emissary Li Qing's expression changed drastically as the lightning was about to strike. A cool breeze blew past, blowing away the lightning. The huge eye on the horizon dissipated, and a towering black shadow suddenly appeared at the edge of the mysterious tribulation crater. There were also similar black shadows in other directions, and there were a total of 23 of them. They were like black pillars that supported the heavens and the earth, causing the people from various forces to be terrified. Who are they? What a strong aura. It's at least a real god or even stronger. Zhou Xuanji made so many enemies. They are afraid that Zhou Xuanji will grow up. After all, this guy is a first-class great emperor. If he grows up, he will affect many things and benefits. Now, Zhou Xuanji is dead for sure. Even if Han Shuzi is here, he might not be able to protect him. 23 mysterious powerful cultivators stood at the edge of the mysterious tribulation crater. Zhou Xuanji had no way to escape. He narrowed his eyes, anger rising in his heart. He had never provoked so many experts. An undeserved calamity. These people were definitely looking for an excuse to get rid of him. Don't let me find out that you're all dead, or I won't rest until you die. Zhou Xuanji's eyes were cold as he mumbled to himself. Emissary Li Qing didn't turn around when he heard his words. Instead, he was ready for battle. Even at this critical juncture, he did not retreat. Zhou Xuanji took out the two god-slaying legendary swords and prepared to fight. At this moment, an old voice sounded, "Sect leader of the Taichu sect, are you going to protect him?" The Taichu sect master. Dao Heaven sect master, Taichu Yudao. Everyone was shocked. The relationship between the Dao Heaven sect and the Divine Cliff was not close and could only be considered average. Could it be to rope Zhou Xuanji in? Taichu Yudao's voice sounded out from the sky, his tone calm as he said, "Zhou Xuanji received a true legacy from a little friend of mine, and he can be said to be related to me. I naturally have to protect him." The moment he said this, everyone in the sky above the mysterious tribulation crater exploded. Zhou Xuanji had such a relationship with the Dao Heaven sect lord? Emissary Li Qing and Li Zhangqi were also stunned. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had obtained little friend Taichu Yudao's legacy. Wouldn't that make me his little brother? No, I'm one level lower than him. Wait, whose legacy did I obtain? Sky-sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei? Hegemon Sword Emperor? Impossible. These two people could not become sworn brothers with Taichu Yudao. He suddenly thought of the World Buddha art and Tianxia map. This art and treasure could transcend the mortal realm. Even in the Great Thousand World, they were still powerful. From the beginning to the end, he did not know who created the World Buddha art. It was said that the World Buddha art had more than 3 levels. The more he thought about it, the more he frowned. Little friend? What a joke. Taichu Yudao, do you really want to become enemies with the entire Center God province? Another voice sounded out, filled with murderous intent. They did not act because they were wary of Taichu Yudao. Taichu Yudao's voice sounded out again, in 10 breaths, "If you do not retreat, then stay here forever." Domineering. No wonder he was once the most powerful cultivator in the Center God province. Perhaps, he might be the most powerful too. Everyone was subdued by his boldness. The 23 black figures fell into silence. Taichu Yudao's domineering attitude caught them off guard, and they hesitated. Soon, they disappeared one after another. The first voice sounded out again, "Taichu Yudao, you can protect him now, but you can't protect him forever. Your Dao Heaven sect might perish soon." Taichu Yudao did not reply, and the other sects did not take it seriously either. Who would not say something harsh? They were more concerned about the relationship between Taichu Yudao and Zhou Xuanji. Would the Dao Heaven sect ally with the Divine Cliff because of this? If these two factions worked together, they could sweep across the Center God province. The sovereign demon sect's Guanhong fell into deep thought with a dark expression. The Buddha ghost sect's people were also whispering among themselves. Emissary Li Qing heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and asked Zhou Xuanji in astonishment, "You have such a relationship with the Dao Heaven sect?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I don't know. It's my first time ascending." Emissary Li Qing nodded. He was not guessing that Zhou Xuanji was hiding something. Perhaps it was the good karma left by Zhou Xuanji's ancestors. Sage Yutian looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated expression. His heart was filled with reluctance. He hated. Not because he hated Zhou Xuanji, but because he hated himself. If he was as powerful as Taichu Yudao, he would have protected Zhou Xuanji too. Who would not want such a prodigy? The more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. He wanted to leave immediately. Li Zhengqi said, "The Ascender examination is over. Begin to count the earth core crystals." As he spoke, the 36 Dao Heaven sect disciples flew down and inspected the geocentric flame crystal for the last person. Zhou Xuanji took out all the earth core crystals and placed them in front of him, waiting for the inspection. He was still thinking about who those people were. Emissary Li Qing saw through his thoughts and said softly, "They are probably first-rate factions in the Center God province. Those sects that came might be one of them too, such as the Sovereign Demon sect and the Buddha Ghost sect. Don't overlook them just because they are here." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He was not that foolish. The leaders of the other sects were not here after all. But why did those powerful cultivators not dare to show their faces just now? Half an hour later, the results of the Ascender examination were out. As expected, Zhou Xuanji ranked first. The second was a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal from the Buddha Ghost sect. He hid himself well and was not encountered by Zhou Xuanji. Gu Moyuan was ranked 7th. It was too late for him to plunder on the last day. Mo Yuha did not have a single earth core crystal, so he was eliminated. Other than Zhou Xuanji, the other Divine Cliff disciples did not make it into the top 10. The top 10 were brought up to the sky by the Dao Heaven sect disciples, while Li Zhengqi led the other sects away. Zhou Xuanji was looking forward to what kind of supreme treasure could help him reach 10th Revolution Golden Immortal quickly. Once he reached 7th Revolution Golden Immortal, he would be able to use the Armageddon Legendary Sword. Just thinking about it made him excited. Chapter 436. Under the guidance of the Dao Heaven sect disciples, Zhou Xuanji and the others came to a palace. At the same time, their seniors followed them. Gu Moyuan kept staring at Zhou Xuanji as though he wanted to eat him alive. Within the palace, 3 elders of the Dao Heaven sect were waiting. They looked like they had walked out of a painting, and they had benevolent looks on their faces. Their white hair fluttered in the wind. Congratulations to the geniuses for winning the Ascender examination. Next, you will receive your rewards according to your ranking. The white-haired elder in the middle smiled and began to receive the rewards from the 10th place. Emissary Li Qing sent a telepathic message to Zhou Xuanji, "We will stay in the Dao Heaven sect for a few days and wait for the Cliff Lord to pick us up." Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly. He understood that he would surely die if he went out now. But he did not know if Han Shuzi could stop so many powerful cultivators. Soon, it was Zhou Xuanji's turn. The Dao Heaven sect put the prize into the storage ring, and Zhou Xuanji swept it with his divine sense and found that there were a few small mountains of pure spirit pills. Apart from this, there was also a red pearl that was as big as a fist. It was sparkling and translucent, and it looked like a fruit. He was curious about what it was but was too embarrassed to ask. "My little friend Xuanji, why don't you stay for a few days? Our sect lord wants to talk to you," the white-haired elder said with a chuckle. The white-haired elder chuckled. The two elders beside him also nodded at Zhou Xuanji with a smile. This kid's talent was even more ridiculous than their sect lord's, so they naturally wanted to befriend him. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Then I shall accept." He also wanted to meet Tai Chu Yudao. After that, he left with emissary Li Qing. Gu Moyuan stopped him suddenly and said with gritted teeth, "Zhou Xuanji, the next time we meet, I will surely defeat you. Don't die." After that, he left with the Buddha ghost sect's true god. Zhou Xuanji had 2 chances to kill him, but he did not. This made him feel a little complicated. He decided to go into closed-door cultivation after returning. He would not come out until he broke through to void extreme immortal. Zhou Xuanji did not mind, but emissary Li Qing shook his head and laughed. "It's so good to be young," he sighed in amazement. Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "I'm young, but he's not." Only God knew how old Gu Moyuan was. In the Daoist temple, Zhou Xuanji finally saw the famous Tai Chu Yudao. He entered the temple by himself while emissary Li Qing waited outside. This person was even more ordinary than he had imagined. Standing there, his aura was void, as if he had become one with heaven and earth. He did not have the aura of an expert at all. However, the more he thought about it, the more he respected Tai Chu Yudao. This was another kind of expert who had reached the peak. They had seen through everything and restrained their sharpness. Tai Chu Yudao stroked his beard and said with a smile, as expected of a first-class great sovereign, "His aptitude is indeed amazing." Zhou Xuanji cupped his fist and said, "Thank you for your help, Sect Lord Tai Chu." Tai Chu Yudao gestured for him to come forward. Zhou Xuanji was not on guard and walked over without hesitation. If Tai Chu Yudao wanted to kill him, he could have done so directly, and he would not have been able to stop him. Tai Chu Yudao took his hand and sighed emotionally. "You should also want to know who the young friend I'm talking about is, right?" Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji's reply, he started talking to himself. Just as Zhou Xuanji had guessed. His little friend was the one who created the world Buddha art and the Tianxia map. He died 180,000 years ago, and the Tianxia map fell into the mortal world. That person was called Gu Tianxia, and he had the bloodline of both humans and demons. Ever since he was born, he had not been accepted by either race. After going through countless trials and tribulations, he created the world Buddha art and the Tianxia map, becoming incredibly famous. He challenged experts everywhere and emerged victorious, until he met Tai Chu Yudao. After losing to Tai Chu Yudao, the two of them appreciated each other and discussed the Tao at the Tao Heaven sect for thousands of years. When mentioning Gu Tianxia, Tai Chu Yudao continuously sighed, his tone filled with regret. If such a genius could live for a long time, he might have been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Zhou Xuanji could not help but ask, "Who killed him?" Tai Chu Yudao frowned and said, "I'm not sure, only know that person's surname is Xian. Xian Daoya." Zhou Xuanji almost cursed out. So it was that bastard. No wonder this fellow would change his fate for him, allowing him to obtain information about the Tianxia map by chance. Feng Kyul, Daoya Old Man, and Devil Emperor Dugu had all become his chess pieces without knowing it. Xian Daoya said that he could become Zhou Xuanji's trump card, but he had killed Gu Tianxia. This promise could also be a threat. Zhou Xuanji's mind worked like lightning, thinking of countless possibilities. He did not say it out loud and pretended that he did not know who Xian Daoya was. He could not convince himself to believe Xian Daoya, nor could he believe Tai Chu Yudao. The best thing to do was to pretend to be a chess piece and wait and see. Zhou Xuanji looked up and asked, "Between you and that person, who is stronger?" This question was very important. Tai Chu Yudao said in a low voice, "I've only seen him once and did not have the chance to act. However, he was able to easily escape from me, so his cultivation should be higher than mine." In actuality, he did not feel that person was a match for him, but in order to make Zhou Xuanji cautious, he could only exaggerate. Zhou Xuanji felt a headache. A powerful enemy that even Taichu Yudao could not defeat. When would he have the strength to fight? However, that fellow had always been in the shadows. There was definitely a power more powerful than him restricting him, making it so that he did not dare to show himself. For Zhou Xuanji, this was a breakthrough point. You can stay in the Dao Heaven sect and wait for Han Shuzi to come and pick you up. That boy is very powerful and might surpass me someday, Taichu Yudao said as he chuckled. Taichu Yudao chuckled. There were only a few people in the world who had the right to call Han Shuzi a brat. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Thank you, Dao Heaven sect, for hosting me." Taichu Yudao waved his hand and said with a smile, "If I fall one day and the world belongs to you, I hope you can treat the Dao Heaven sect well." Fall? Zhou Xuanji thought about it and said seriously, "I owe you a debt of gratitude, so I can naturally do this. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have the strength to do it." Taichu Yudao nodded with a smile, not doubting Zhou Xuanji's potential at all. The two chatted for a while more before Zhou Xuanji left. The Daoist temple fell silent. Taichu Yudao stopped smiling and took out a wooden stick. There were two strange words carved on it. He mumbled, "What you said was true. I'm suddenly very interested in who is playing this game of chess. It's time for the trump card you left behind to come out." The wooden stick in his hand dissipated into motes of light that floated in the air. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji and emissary Li Qing returned to the residence. Emissary Li Qing smiled and said, "The Dao fetus red loath pearl is a connate creation, and it has existed for more than 100,000 years. Even the Dao Heaven sect has less than 10 of them. You can use them when you return to the Divine Cliff. After all, you will be in seclusion for a long time." Zhou Xuanji nodded. In the Daoist temple, Taichu Yudao had told him about the Dao fetus red loath pearl's origins, so he wanted to quickly return to the Divine Cliff. The two parted ways and returned to their respective rooms. Zhou Xuanji sat on the bed and took out the ancient god sword, summoning the 9 souls. He asked Gu Tianxia and Xian Daoya to see if anyone knew. Emperor Zhao sneered, "Xian Daoya? He's just a paper tiger. Don't be fooled by him." Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 437. Hearing Emperor Zhao's words, Zhou Xuanji could not help but feel surprised, so he asked about Xian Daoya's strength. Emperor Zhao smiled and said, "This guy is a special soul that can escape beyond the 5 elements heaven and earth. He comes and goes without a trace, so he gives off an unfathomable feeling. However, he is not strong. He was able to kill Gu Tianxia back then because Gu Tianxia was unprepared. At that time, Gu Tianxia and Divine Lord Ji fought and both were injured, which gave him the opportunity. I once met Xian Daoya. At that time, he wanted to split his soul and take over my body, but I easily killed him." His tone was arrogant and full of disdain. An existence that could intimidate Taichu Yudao had been accidentally defeated by him. How could he not be happy? Emperor Hanlin then said, "Even so, no one can kill him. This is also a form of strength. He is truly an undying existence in the great 1,000 worlds." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji could not help but think of Daoya old man's undying divine ability. So it was a legacy. Emperor Zhao spoke again, "Brother Zhou, find a chance to resurrect me. I'll bring you on a horse galloping across the Center God province. Although I'm not even 80,000 years old, I almost became the sovereign demon sect master." Back then, he began to boast endlessly, and Zhou Xuanji was a little doubtful. This guy was once a sect master candidate of the sovereign demon sect? The sovereign demon sect was a force even stronger than the Divine Cliff. Was this guy really that powerful? The current sovereign demon sect master had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Venerable Xian snorted coldly, "Sovereign demon sect?" When this sovereign was still alive, there seemed to be a junior who founded the sovereign demon sect. Emperor Zhao laughed. "You really know how to brag." The other mighty figures spoke one after another. "Emperor Zhao, you just want to revive. Oh right, you still haven't told me how you died. I know, he died of chi deviation. Tisk tsk, the sovereign demon sect has already declined? Are you looking down on me? We're all remnant souls, so stop boasting. Zhou Xuanji could tell that these souls all wanted to revive. It was not impossible. But not for now. Without sufficient strength, he still wanted to understand the boundless universe through the 9 souls. After a series of inquiries, the pressure in his heart suddenly decreased. Although Xian Daoya was undying, his combat power was not strong, so there was no need to worry too much about him. What he had to worry about the most was that Xian Daoya would use some tricks and attract other experts to deal with him. After chatting for an hour, Zhou Xuanji put away the ancient god's sword. He sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. This was the Tao Heaven sect, so he wasn't afraid of sneak attacks. Meanwhile, news of the Ascender examination in the mysterious tribulation crater spread like wildfire. The news that Ji Xian was Zhou Xuanji swept across the entire region like a hurricane. Within just 10 days, the entire Center God province was discussing this. First-class Great Emperor, Zhou Xuanji. He had ascended. He had first subdued Shi Shenzong before defeating Gu Moyuan and Mo Yuha, obtaining first place in the Ascender examination. In an instant, Zhou Xuanji once again became an influential figure, and the younger generation all looked forward to him. Zhou Xuanji was not even 100 years old. These days, whenever Zhou Xuanji went out to walk around the Tao Heaven sect, the disciples all looked at him differently. Wherever he went, there would be people discussing and pointing at him. Of course, no one dared to get close to him. A first-class great sovereign only existed in legends. They were already very excited to be able to see one with their own eyes. 24 days had passed since the Ascender examination ended. Han Shuzi finally came. He came to his residence, and all the disciples surrounded him. Cliff Lord, you are so slow, Zhou Xuanji said faintly. They only needed 6 days to get here, but Han Shuzi took more than half a month. However, Han Shuzi came to save him, so he could not blame him. He could not wait to absorb the Tao fetus red loath pearl in isolation. Let's go, Han Shuzi said with a smile. I have already informed the Taichu sect lord. After that, he waved his right hand, and the group flew up with the wind. A green gust of wind swept toward the horizon. Along the way, all the Divine Cliff's disciples were careful, fearing that the enemy would appear again. Han Shuzi praised everyone before saying to Zhou Xuanji, after this mission, focus on your cultivation and try to break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. The other disciples were envious. Becoming a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal after ascending for less than a year. Compared to him, they were really. Wu Mingyi felt the most complicated because he ascended on the same day as Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Cliff Lord, can you help me investigate the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords? I will find them myself, 18 divine swords. Emissary Li Qing looked at him in surprise. Han Shuzi smiled with narrowed eyes and said, who told you that the 18 divine swords really exist? In the Center God province, the 18 divine swords were just a legend. Zhou Xuanji replied telepathically. There was nothing to hide about Magistrate Chui's identity. After all, he was very powerful. Who would dare to make trouble for him? Han Shuzi heard him and looked at him deeply. The others were shocked. They immediately understood. No wonder Zhou Xuanji could ascend to the divine cliff. He should have appeared in the heavenly palace. That's easy. I have something else to tell you, Han Shuzi said as he nodded. Han Shuzi nodded, and the smile on his face disappeared. Zhou Xuanji looked at him curiously. Han Shuzi did not care about the others and said straightforwardly, 2 more people ascended from the northern wilderness region. They are Biyao Yisun and Xiao Hongjun. You seem to have enmity with them. Biyao Yisun is easy to deal with. That boy has a carefree personality and will not ask his revered teacher for help. However, Xiao Hongjun will definitely take revenge. She has already returned to the Blood Bat Cave and will most likely ask old ancestor Blood Bat to deal with you. That demon's cultivation is not inferior to mine, so you must be careful. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had never thought that these two fellows would also come to the Center God province. He decided that when he reached the Divine Cliff, he would take out the spirit communication heart to contact Marquis and ask about the situation in the northern wilderness region. Han Shuzi then asked, "Is Devil Emperor Dugu also in the northern wilderness region? Is your relationship with him good?" Hearing this, emissary Li Qing's expression slightly changed. Back then, Devil Emperor Dugu had charged into the Divine Cliff alone and was the Divine Cliff's mortal enemy. Zhou Xuanji nodded and did not hide anything. He had his own friends, and he believed that Han Shuzi would not be so narrow-minded. After hearing this, Han Shuzi nodded and said, "Devil Emperor Dugu is indeed peerless and peerless among second-class great emperors. However, this person can easily go berserk, so you must be careful." Easily go berserk? Zhou Xuanji's heart thumped. That old guy wouldn't go berserk in the northern wilderness region and slaughter all living beings, right? Don't worry. It's just that he can't withstand the spiritual chi of the Center God province. He'll be fine in the mortal world. Otherwise, why would he hide in the northern wilderness region? Han Shuzi saw through his thoughts and consoled him, causing him to instantly heave a sigh of relief. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that even if he came to the Center God province, he would not be able to see through the northern wilderness region. Why were Wang Ho, Devil Emperor Dugu, Bai Haoisin, Xian Daoya, and Xiao Hongjun in the northern wilderness region? He couldn't understand, so he didn't ask. Half a day later, after that, they returned to the Divine Cliff. After returning to his courtyard, Zhou Xuanji immediately took out the spirit communication heart and contacted Marquis. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 438. Only Zhou Xuanji could enter this courtyard. He had given the order that everyone else had to call out to him before entering, including Shi Shenzong. Shi Shenzong and Fei Hai were not here, they were most likely studying in Divine Cliff City. Soon, Wang Ho's voice came from the psychic heart. "What is it?" Zhou Xuanji immediately asked about the situation in the northern wilderness region, and Marquis replied. After he left, the northern wilderness region remained peaceful. Devil Emperor Dugu guarded the northern part of the continent and never left his residence. The other experts who could threaten the northern wilderness region did not cause any trouble, and it was a peaceful time. Zhou Xuanji's heart was finally relieved. He told them about Xiao Hongjuan's ascension and told Marquis to be careful. Then, he put away the heart of communication, gave a few instructions to the maid, and returned to his room to begin his closed-door training. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, he held the Tao fetus red loath pearl in his arms. He immediately used world internalization and absorbed the spiritual energy within the Tao fetus red loath pearl. Boom! Zhou Xuanji felt a jolt in his soul as spiritual qi surged into his body. The feeling of spiritual qi cleansing his bones and tendons was really wonderful. He entered a state of full concentration and cultivation. Inside the Cliff Master's palace, Han Shuzi gathered the 36 envoys, his personal disciples, and all the elders together. He sat on the head of the table and began to speak. On the way to the Tao Heaven sect, I encountered those people who wanted to kill Zhou Xuanji. Their target has already shifted to our Divine Cliff. According to my investigations, the factions involved include the Kuei Muhal, the 7 Big Dipper sects, the Buddha Ghost sect, the Black Thunder Aperture, and the 8 Desolate Spirit sect. Although I killed 8 people, it's far from enough. The Divine Cliff's greatest disaster in the past 100,000 years is about to come. I don't want to explain why we have to protect Zhou Xuanji. You should all understand that you must be on your guard in case the enemy invades at any time. His voice became more serious than ever, and no one refuted. As the rulers of the Divine Cliff, they knew that the Divine Cliff's development had reached a bottleneck. They could no longer excavate the resources of the mortal realms. Zhou Xuanji was their hope to break through this obstacle. The eldest disciple, Yang Yutian, cupped his fist and said, "Do we need to allocate resources to Zhou Xuanji?" He was not jealous of Zhou Xuanji. Compared to the cliff master, he was more willing to see the divine cliff prosper. Moreover, according to his understanding, Zhou Xuanji had created his own sect in the mortal realm and loved swords. He most likely would not accept the position of cliff master. Han Shuzi shook his head and said, "He has his own fortuitous encounters. There's no need for us to add fuel to the fire. It's enough for us to help him find out the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." 18 divine swords. A commotion broke out in the hall. Yang Yutian was stunned for a moment before he said, "I do know of a holy sword, but this sword is located." He told them the location of the holy sword, causing everyone to be surprised. "Why is it in his hands? If that's the case, how did you get the sword?" "Forget it. Let's find out the whereabouts of the other sacred swords." "I agree. Cliff Lord, you cannot leave the divine cliff. If you leave, the divine cliff might be attacked." Han Shuzi frowned as well. There was fear in his eyes. He sighed. "Let's look for the whereabouts of the other holy swords. That person is crazy, but he is extremely powerful. Even if I were to encounter him, I wouldn't have any chance of winning." The others nodded in agreement. Yang Yutian frowned but did not say anything. Zhou Xuanji's ascension caused a huge commotion in the Center God province. Ever since he went into closed-door cultivation, the Divine Cliff's disciples were often ambushed by mysterious factions when they went out on missions. Even the Divine Cliff city was infiltrated by enemies. Although the higher-ups could understand it, the disciples were displeased. They felt that it was unfair. For Zhou Xuanji, the Divine Cliff placed them in danger. Soon, the Divine Cliff was filled with complaints. 10 months later. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 93 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained, glorious gold, God Temple Diamond Sword, Heavenly Soul, Shaking Wind Sword. Zhou Xuanji was woken up by the sword spirit's voice. He did not open his eyes but continued to absorb the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl spiritual chi. Because he was about to break through. The Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl had accumulated spiritual chi for hundreds of thousands of years. In less than a year, he was about to break through to 6th Revolution Golden Immortal. Which meant that he would reach 7th Revolution Golden Immortal in at most 2 years. The Armageddon legendary sword was waving at him. 5 days later. He successfully broke through to 6th Revolution Golden Immortal. He continued to cultivate. In the courtyard next to him, Shi Shenzong sensed his magic energy aura and frowned slightly. "No, I can't be left behind by him," he said with gritted teeth. He stopped practicing with the sword and sat down to internalize chi. Boom! Under the thunderous sky, mountains were densely packed like spikes. Biyao Isan knelt at the foot of a mountain, and Feng Qiu was beside him. At this moment, Feng Qiu was only left with his soul. He was like a candle flame, flickering and about to dissipate at any moment. "How much longer do we have to kneel for?" he asked with gritted teeth. Biyao Isan used the same method as Zhou Xuanji to ascend. In order to follow him, Feng Qiu gave up his body and was only left with his soul. Since things had come to this, he could only follow Biyao Isan to the end. Biyao Isan straightened his back and placed his hands on his legs as he said, "Wait for this emperor's revered teacher to descend. When that time comes, he can casually point at you, and you will recover your body." Hearing this, Feng Qiu became excited. He could not maintain his soul form for too long. After all, his magic energy was not powerful enough. Whoosh! A cold gust of wind blew, causing Feng Qiu's soul to tremble. "Biyao, you still have the face to come back?" A dignified voice sounded out. This sentence caused Feng Qiu's expression to instantly fall. Fudge! Biyao Isan had come to the mortal realm without telling his revered teacher? If that was the case, would his revered teacher become angry whenever he saw him? The more Feng Qiu thought about it, the more terrified he became. Biyao Isin sighed and said, "Revered teacher, this emperor was wrong. This emperor was instigated by a traitor. That old fellow is too sinister, you shouldn't have made friends with him." As he spoke, a figure appeared in front of him and slapped him across the face, sending him flying and crashing into a mountain. Feng Qiu was given a big fright and his body trembled as he looked at the newcomer in terror. It was a well-built man who looked 40 or 50 years old. His black hair was mixed with many white hairs, and he wore tattered gray clothes, looking like a boorish man from the mountains. He looked at Biyao Isin and said in a low voice, "Are you blaming teacher?" Biyao Isin hurriedly landed and knelt as he begged, "Revered teacher, how could I dare? I was wrong." Seeing that his revered teacher was angry, he did not dare to call himself this emperor anymore. The well-built man looked at him and said coldly, "From today onwards, don't descend into the mortal realm again. Teacher will give you a mission, and you must properly cultivate." Biyao Isin felt quite surprised and asked, "What mission?" The well-built man replied, "Defeat someone and bring glory to me." "Who?" "The 12th on the great emperor's steel, Zhou Xuanji." Biyao Isin's face instantly became pale, and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. Chapter 439. Biyao Isin forced a smile and said, "Revered teacher, Zhou Xuanji is still young, and I've seen him before. Why suppress him?" Feng Qiu's expression was strange. "Young? Suppress? Are you kidding me?" The muscular man stared at him and cursed, "I told you to fight him, so you did it. He's a first-class great emperor. Once he grows up, he will be 9 heavens above you." Biyao Isin felt depressed and asked, "What's the reason?" "There has to be a reason, right? Is it because he's too talented?" The muscular man replied, "The person behind him is from the great Emperor Dao court. Ever since he was born, the great thousand worlds' fate changed. The races of the other divine provinces showed signs of invading the center god province. First, it was the northern wilderness region, and next, it might be the great thousand world. It's all because of him." Biyao Isin opened his eyes wide and said with gritted teeth, "Great Emperor Dao court? Wait. It can't be that old guy." Feng Qiu was quite confused. What was the great Emperor Dao court? It sounded very powerful. "It's him, Xian Daoya." The Daoya old man beside Zhou Xuanji is the reincarnation of his soul. The muscular man nodded with a sharp look in his eyes. Biyao Isin's breathing became ragged, and his anger grew. So that's why Xian Daoya tricked him into descending to be Zhou Xuanji's stepping stone. How hateful. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 95 years old and obtained 3 legendary swords. They were the Abyssal Cleaving Sword, Silver Moon Sword, and 3 Leopard One Sword. They were all glorious gold grade. To him, his luck was a little bad, but he did not give up. Because he was about to break through to 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. It had to be said that the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl's spiritual chi was too massive. As his cultivation grew, the rate at which he absorbed spiritual chi increased, and he felt that it was inexhaustible. He even suspected that this pearl contained an independent world. Other than spiritual chi, the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl also had a special energy that could continuously improve his body. After breaking through in 8 days, he finally reached 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. After consolidating his magic energy, he immediately took out the all-evil yin-yang destruction. At first glance, the sword looked like a pair of scissors with black and white blades. There was a gap of 3 centimeters between the 2 blades, the white blade and the black blade respectively. There were dozens of tiny black and white beads the size of sesame seeds embedded in the sword guard. He swallowed his saliva and muttered, "What a terrifying power," even though the all-evil yin-yang destruction didn't move and he didn't inject any magic power into it. He could still feel the surging energy contained within it. If it were to explode, it could destroy everything. He smiled in satisfaction. He didn't test the power of the all-evil yin-yang destruction, but put it back into the supreme warehouse. He didn't stand up and leave. Instead, he continued to absorb the Tao fetus red loath pearl. Since he was in seclusion, he naturally had to absorb the Tao fetus red loath pearl in one go. In the courtyard, Shi Shenzong was currently practicing his swordsmanship when Fei Hai came to his side and asked curiously, "Did Senior Zhou break through again?" Ever since he knew that Ji Xian was Zhou Xuanji, he was extremely excited and acted arrogantly wherever he went. Now, as long as he went to Divine Cliff City, many disciples would try to curry favor with him. Of course, there were also people who mocked and ridiculed him, but he did not take it to heart. Judging from the Divine Cliff's intentions, it was obvious that they wanted to nurture Zhou Xuanji as the sex treasure. Naturally, he did not care about the jealous words of some disciples. Shi Shenzong continued to practice as he replied, he behaved calmly. He was used to it. He did not want to compete with Zhou Xuanji anymore. This was the first time Shi Shenzong had felt powerless towards a person's talent. In the past, he thought that he could catch up to Zhou Xuanji. From the looks of it, however, he had set his sights on the Ascender assessment. He wanted to obtain such an opportunity as well. By the way, the 100 Swords gathering will begin in 10 years. Don't you want to go and have a look? Fei Hai could tell that he was not in a good mood, so he changed the topic. Shi Shenzong was a second-grade great emperor, someone he had to curry favor with. Hearing this, Shi Shenzong stopped and asked, "The desolate North 7 sword emperors are also participating?" Fei Hai nodded and said excitedly, "The 100 Swords martial competition is a grand event for sword cultivators like you. It gathers all the powerful sword cultivators in the Center God province and is hosted by Sword Lord Gu. I heard that you can obtain the Heaven and Earth sword embryo from the 100 Swords martial competition this time. Don't you want to try?" Shi Shenzong started to think. Fei Hai did not disturb Zhou Xuanji. After making sure that Zhou Xuanji did not intend to come out, he turned around and left. Cliff Master Hall. Han Shuzi sat on the chair inside, a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. This kid's absorption ability is too strong. To think that my joke back then would come true. Yang Yutian, who was standing in front of him, also had a complicated expression. He admired Zhou Xuanji's talent, but he was also a little unwilling. Fortunately, he was neither jealous nor resentful. Yang Yutian cupped his fist and said, "Revered teacher, those sects have been acting more and more brazenly recently. I'm afraid that a war is about to break out. But I keep feeling that there's a conspiracy. They have been delaying, and I don't know what they're waiting for." Han Shuzi said with squinted eyes, "Don't you understand what they're waiting for? Who is the greatest threat in the Divine Cliff? If they want to start a war, they have to get rid of the greatest threat first." Yang Yutian opened his eyes wide. Wasn't the most powerful cultivator in the Divine Cliff Han Shuzi? Could it be that the enemy was trying to assassinate Han Shuzi? "Yutian, we must prepare for the worst. If I die, the position of Cliff Master will belong to you. You must build a good relationship with Wuxia and Zhou Xuanji. They are the two best people in the Divine Cliff, especially Zhou Xuanji. I see that this kid is magnanimous and principled. If you don't target him, he will definitely repay you." Han Shuzi got up and said with deep meaning. He had always seen the conflict between Yang Yutian and Wuxia but rarely mentioned it. Yang Yutian said anxiously, "Revered teacher, what are you talking about? How can you die?" Han Shuzi waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just saying if. I've already written my will. If one day, you face the same situation as me, remember to leave a backup plan. Don't let the Divine Cliff die." Yang Yutian was silent. The heavy responsibility was suffocating him. He truly felt what the position of Cliff Master represented. After that, Han Shuzi asked him to leave. Only Han Shuzi was left in the palace. Han Shuzi sat down and said faintly, "Come out." Right after he spoke, a black shadow appeared. It looked like a person. The black shadow laughed coldly, "Han Shuzi, it seems like you already know the outcome. Why are you still so stubborn? Han Shuzi said calmly, to protect the divine cliff. I already knew that you have been suppressing the divine cliff. But for the peace of the Center God province, you did not make a big move. The black shadow paced back and forth in front of him and seemed to be thinking about something. A while later, the black shadow came to a realization and said, I see. Zhou Xuanji is related to the previous cliff master of the divine cliff, right? Or else, why would you protect him so desperately? You can't just talk about talent alone. Han Shuzi's pupils contracted. Just when he was about to speak, the black shadow burrowed into the ground. He could not stop it in time. With a long sigh, his body collapsed like a pile of mud. His eyes became hazy as he mumbled, if you were here, how would we deal with this tribulation? Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 440. 3 years later. Zhou Xuanji was 98 years old and successfully broke through to 8th Revolution Golden Immortal. At the same time, he also obtained 2 ordinary sword techniques and 5 divine swords, 4 amethyst divine swords and 1 heavenly soul divine sword. They were the memory sword, the torrential rain sword, the earth attraction sword, the great western dipper sword, and the sunset heavenly sword. Zhou Xuanji was most interested in the memory sword. Although it was only an amethyst godly sword, its special ability was not bad. If he was stabbed by it, he would easily fall into his memories. In the midst of battle, if he could make his opponent recall their memories, it might have an unexpected effect. Zhou Xuanji somehow thought of the animations, dramas, and movies in his previous life. Whenever he started reminiscing, he was about to die. After reaching the 8th Revolution Golden Immortal Realm, he stopped. He took out the ancient god sword and summoned the 9 souls. The spiritual energy of the Tao fetus red loath pearl hadn't been used up yet, but he felt that things were going too smoothly. If this goes on, will there be repercussions? Demon Lord Ryuan replied, the Tao fetus red loath bead cannot be considered a treasure of heaven and earth. Just like your violet demon monarch's heart, it can be considered a great fortune of heaven and earth. The Tao Heaven sect treats them as treasures, and they are only able to establish their current network of connections through these items. You don't have to worry. The 9 souls within the ancient god sword were Emperor Hanlin, Saber Monarch Donghai, Demon Lord Ryuan, Emperor Songhai, Ghost Emperor Zhangtian, Emperor Zhao, Tao Lord Shantian, Lu Wuji, and Lord Xian. The most mysterious ones, Tao Lord Shantian and Lord Xian, were still unknown. The others had all made a name for themselves in the Great Thousand World, which allowed Zhou Xuanji to understand many historical truths that no one knew about. He curiously asked, how did the Tao fetus red loath pearl come about? This thing was so powerful that the 5-colored immortal fruit was nothing compared to it. Lu Wuji replied, it was born from the Tao fetus tree. The Tao fetus tree has 7 colored fruits, and the Tao fetus red loath pearl is the 3rd grade fruit. Only 3rd class? Zhou Xuanji blinked and suddenly wanted to snatch the Tao embryo tree. Of course, he was just thinking about it. He was indebted to Taichu Yudao. Even if he had the power, he would not do such a thing. Zhou Xuanji chatted a bit more before putting away the ancient god sword. He sent a voice transmission to Fei Hai, who was cultivating in the mansion, and asked him to investigate Xian Xianghua's whereabouts. It had already been 6 years since she ascended. With Xian Xianghua's personality, she should have already made a name for herself. To prevent any accidents, he even mentioned Baihao Yisin and Xiao Hongjun. If his enemies found out that he had Fei Hai investigate the whereabouts of the 3 of them, they would probably think that he was investigating his enemies. Fei Hai immediately set off. He had many friends outside the Divine Cliff, and even more so inside the Divine Cliff. All he had to do was ask his friends to pay attention when they went out to train. Half a year later. Inside the Cliff Master's palace. Han Shuzi, who was cultivating quietly, suddenly opened his eyes and cried out in a deep voice, "Who is it? Come out." A burst of eerie laughter rang out, as if a malicious ghost had entered the hall. Immediately after, a man emerged from a wooden pillar at the side. His upper body was exposed, his white hair scattered over his shoulders, his skin was dark, and his face was twisted and ferocious. He wore a brocade robe with poisonous thorns in its mouth. He stared at Han Shuzi and said coldly, "Han Shuzi, your death has come." Han Shuzi's pupils suddenly constricted when he saw him, and he immediately stood up. "Malicious Buddha! How could you?" Han Shuzi cried out with a trembling voice, his eyes filled with fear. Another figure appeared from the ground in front of him. It was also a malicious Buddha, like a clone. This malicious Buddha laughed sinisterly and said, "You should know who you have offended. Someone asked me to kill you. It's that simple." Numerous malicious Buddhas appeared around Han Shuzi and surrounded him. "To be honest, I don't understand you. You have offended both sides because of Zhou Xuanji. One is the great Emperor Dao Court, and the other is the demonic emperor. Where do you get your confidence from?" The 9 malicious Buddhas asked at the same time. Their voices gathered together, and the pressure increased tremendously. Han Shuzi frowned and said, "You were asked by the demonic emperor?" The malicious Buddhas laughed condescendingly, and murderous intent burst out from their eyes at the same time. They charged at Han Shuzi together. Boom! A world-shaking explosion came, shaking the entire divine cliff. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating in his residence, opened his eyes in shock. He immediately sent out his divine sense and saw that the Cliff Master Hall was engulfed by billowing dust and intense flames. Countless disciples were rushing over from all directions. Enemy attack. Someone sneak attack the Cliff Master. Prepare for battle. What's going on? Who dares to charge into our divine cliff? Loud shouts sounded out as the 36 emissaries and legacy disciples rushed over. Zhou Xuanji frowned and walked out of the room. All the servants in the mansion were in a state of panic. Even Fei Hai looked terrified. Shi Shenzong came before Zhou Xuanji and said in a low voice, "They might be coming for you. I feel that you should run." The other party directly attacked the Cliff Master. They are evidently determined to win. If they directly attacked Zhou Xuanji, it meant that they were wary of Han Shuzi. However, since they attacked Han Shuzi first, it meant that they had great confidence. Zhou Xuanji's frown became even deeper. How could he run away just like that? Han Shuzi had shown him too much kindness. He could not be so heartless and unscrupulous. At that moment, emissary Li Qing suddenly appeared. He said in a low voice, "The two of you, come with me." After saying this, he waved his sleeve and used magic energy to forcefully sweep Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong away. A green gust of wind quickly swept into the fog that covered the sky. Within the wind, Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, "Where are we going?" He swept his divine sense over emissary Li Qing. He still remembered the story of Sun Wukong defeating the white-boned spirit 3 times. Could it be that this fellow was an enemy in disguise? Emissary Li Qing's expression was unsightly and he gritted his teeth as he said, "The Cliff Master ordered me to escape with you. The divine cliff is in danger. The one who came is called Malicious Buddha, and he is an undying old monster who has lived for millions of years. Even the Cliff Master is not a match for him. Damn it, why does such a person still exist? Malicious Buddha." Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong's expressions greatly fell. They had both heard of this name before. This person had once been a Buddha before falling into the demonic path. His strength was unparalleled, and he had disappeared for hundreds of thousands of years. Most people thought that he was a fictional existence. Zhou Xuanji gripped his fists and asked, "What about the Cliff Master and the Divine Cliff? Will they be safe after I leave?" Emissary Li Qing did not reply, but his body slightly trembled. Evidently, he was not very calm. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji sighed. In the end, it was he who had harmed the Divine Cliff. He could not understand. Why would an existence like Malicious Buddha target him and be jealous of his talent? Logically, this should not be the case. After all, he was not the only first-class great emperor. There were 11 more first-class great emperors behind him. Where are we going next? Shi Shenzong asked. He did not let emissary Li Qing leave him behind and chose to follow Zhou Xuanji instead. He had promised to follow Zhou Xuanji, so he could not go back on his word. Even if the outcome was death. Emissary Li Qing looked into the distance and mumbled, to seek refuge with the most powerful existence in the Center God province. Who? Shi Shenzong asked. Emissary Li Qing sighed, Sovereign Xian. Shi Shenzong was stunned. Who was that? Zhou Xuanji's eyes widened, and he almost blurted out the name of a divine beast. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 441. Sovereign Xian. Wasn't this fellow one of the 9 souls in the ancient god sword? Wasn't he already dead? Zhou Xuanji's expression became strange, and Shi Shenzong asked who Sovereign Xian was. Emissary Li Qing looked incredibly respectful as he said, this person attained the Tao extremely early, and very few people know of his existence. When the Sovereign Demon sect was first established, Sovereign Xian's might had already shaken the great thousand world. He began to endlessly praise Sovereign Xian. Hearing this, Shi Shenzong felt quite surprised. He had never thought that there would be such a powerful being in the world. Zhou Xuanji suddenly asked, he's lived for so long, could he have already fallen? Hearing this, emissary Li Qing glared at him and said, don't speak nonsense. If the old senior hears this, things will be bad. He's our only hope of survival. Zhou Xuanji felt even more depressed. Sovereign Xian really died. His soul is still in my sword. He asked, why don't we go and join Taichu Yudao? Could it be that he's not a match for the malicious Buddhas? Wasn't Taichu Yudao the most powerful person in the Center God province? Emissary Li Qing shook his head and said, even though Taichu Yudao is powerful, he cannot withstand so many experts. Half a month ago, he was ambushed and was heavily injured. Zhou Xuanji frowned, even Taichu Yudao was heavily injured? Just who was it? He asked emissary Li Qing, but emissary Li Qing did not reply, he most likely did not know. The 3 of them continued onwards. Zhou Xuanji did not dare to summon Sovereign Xian, in case emissary Li Qing lost all hope. On the way, they felt incredibly uneasy. They were worried for themselves and for the divine cliff. Rumble, dense fog rolled about, and the once prosperous divine cliff city was now in ruins. Countless disciples lay within the ruins, and there were corpses everywhere. Blood splattered everywhere. The 18 malicious Buddhas in the sky laughed wildly without any restraint. Yang Yutian held his bloodied arm and looked at the malicious Buddhas with a look of reluctance. The malicious Buddhas ignored him because there were too many of them looking at him like this. From today onwards, the divine cliff will plummet. I won't destroy you, I'll make you live on in humiliation. The malicious Buddhas laughed maniacally in unison before vanishing into thin air. He alone had killed more than half of the disciples of the divine cliff. The 36 envoys and direct disciples were almost all dead, leaving only Yang Yutian alive. Yang Yutian sat paralyzed in the ruins. Despair and confusion occupied his heart. He suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji. Why wasn't he here? Could it be that Han Shuzi had anticipated this? They flew for about 6 hours. Emissary Li Qing suddenly stopped, causing Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shenzong's hearts to tremble. Shi Shenzong cautiously asked, what is it? Emissary Li Qing grit his teeth and said, it's over. It wasn't that he didn't want to fly, but there was an extremely powerful force restraining him. Zhou Xuanji and his companions' expressions changed. They took out their swords and prepared to fight. Where do you think you're going? The malicious Buddha's cold laughter came from all directions. Then, the 8 malicious Buddhas walked out from different directions and stepped into the green wind. Zhou Xuanji and the other 2 were surrounded. Emissary Li Qing took a deep breath and asked, Are you the malicious Buddha? The malicious Buddha had rushed over. What did this mean? The divine cliff, he did not dare to imagine, and his heart was filled with terror. The malicious Buddha ignored him and looked at Zhou Xuanji. After sizing him up, he smiled in satisfaction and said, "You're indeed talented. You even control the violet demon monarch's heart and the Tianxia map. No wonder the demonic emperor wants you so much." The demonic emperor. Shi Shenzong and emissary Li Qing's expressions changed greatly. They had never expected the mastermind to be the demonic emperor. Theoretically, Zhou Xuanji should not be on the same side as the demonic emperor. Zhou Xuanji did not expect the malicious Buddha to be able to see through the violet demon monarch's heart. Just how high was this fellow's cultivation? Shi Shenzong pointed his sword at the malicious Buddha and said in a low voice, "What do you want?" Just when he spoke, a malicious Buddha appeared behind him and grabbed his shoulder. He threw him out of the green wind and quickly disappeared. In front of the malicious Buddha, Shi Shenzong could not resist at all. Zhou Xuanji's expression sank. He was hesitating if he should use the all-evil yin-yang destruction. He could tell that the malicious Buddha did not want to kill him. Otherwise, he would already be dead. Emissary Li Qing protected Zhou Xuanji and took a deep breath. "What benefits did the demonic emperor give you to, Puchi?" A withered hand pierced through his chest and ripped out his heart. The hand crushed it, causing blood to splatter onto his clothes. Emissary Li Qing was stunned and looked at the hand in his chest in terror. In the next second, the malicious Buddha directly tore him apart. Blood splattered onto Zhou Xuanji's face, causing him to stand there dumbfounded, and his body slightly trembled. Another malicious Buddha grabbed emissary Li Qing's soul. "Zhou Xuanji, look closely. This is true power. No matter how peerless your talent is, you will still feel despair." The malicious Buddhas lightly laughed. Their laughter was incredibly terrifying and savage. Emissary Li Qing's soul was directly crushed by the malicious Buddha. His soul dissipated and he could no longer be reincarnated. Zhou Xuanji's pupils constricted and a terrifying aura exploded out, scattering the green wind around him. Just as he was about to take out the all-evil yin-yang destruction, a malicious Buddha appeared in front of him and grabbed his throat. Their eyes met, and Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with the malicious Buddha's savage face. Boom! A terrifying soul impact sent Zhou Xuanji's consciousness into an abyss, and he fell unconscious. The malicious Buddha grabbed him and coldly laughed as he said, "No matter how angry you are, it's useless. In front of absolute power, the weak have no hope." Under the azure sky, there was a boundless grassy plain. Zhou Xuanji lay on the grass as a light breeze blew past. He suddenly opened his eyes and sat up straight. He breathed deeply and instinctively looked around. "Where am I?" He looked around in confusion before examining his body. "You're going to die." A voice sounded out from behind him, causing him to look back in shock. He saw a man wearing tiger-patterned blood-red clothes standing behind him. His figure was tall and straight, blocking out the sunlight. He hurriedly stood up. This man was half a head taller than him and had broad shoulders. His black hair was slightly messy, and his eye sockets were very dark. His eyelids were sunken in, and he had no eyeballs. Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The man in blood-red clothes calmly replied, "I'm the owner of the Tianxia map. You should have heard of my name. Gu Tianxia." Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses. Wasn't this the virtual world that he had entered when he first obtained the Tianxia map? Gu Tianxia walked to his side, raised his head and murmured, "The malicious Buddha is really a ruthless character. Even at my peak state, I am not even 1/10 of him." Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "If so, what's the point of seeing me?" From the looks of it, his physical body had already been imprisoned by the malicious Buddha. Gu Tianxia replied, "Our experiences are the same. We're both pawns of the great Emperor Dao Court's Xian Daoya. However, we can't just give up." Great Emperor Dao Court? What was that? Zhou Xuanji frowned even more. It was the first time he had heard of this name. The Great Emperor Tao Court is a faction that was born at the beginning of the world. No one knows how many people are hidden within, and they are incredibly mysterious. Xian Daoya is one of them. Gu Tianxia said faintly, which made Zhou Xuanji even more confused. Why would such a powerful force hide in the dark? Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 442. Are you wondering why the Great Emperor Tao Court is hiding in the dark? Gu Tianxia asked. Having heard him, Zhou Xuanji nodded lightly. Wasn't this guy blind? No, this was the virtual world. It didn't matter if he was blind or not. Gu Tianxia answered his own question. The Great Emperor Tao Court is indeed powerful, but there are definitely powerful existences restricting them, just like the mysterious existences in the 33rd heaven and the ancient celestial race that disappeared a long time ago. Above the 33 heavens? Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of Marquis. His original body was in closed-door cultivation there. According to what Marquis had said, there was a very powerful existence watching over them. Could that person be an existence that could resist the Great Emperor Tao Court? He had heard of the ancient immortal clan. A true immortal god. It was acknowledged by the heavenly Tao. Malicious Buddha's mission is to deliver you to the demonic emperor, but Xian Daoya has been plotting against you and will not give up. There will definitely be a battle between the two of them, and that will be your chance. I will use the Tianxia map to teleport him out. As for where he will be teleported to, that will be up to the heavens. Gu Tianxia turned to Zhou Xuanji and said softly. He said it in a very relaxed manner. Zhou Xuanji asked, they are so powerful. Even if I escape, they will find me. Gu Tianxia replied, being able to escape once is one thing. They are not omnipotent. The reason why they can find you is because everyone in the world knows that you are at the divine cliff. Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses. If the demonic emperor and malicious Buddha were that powerful, they would have found him long ago. There would have been no need for them to wait for so many years. Gu Tianxia opened his eyelids suddenly. His eyeballs were like two black holes, and Zhou Xuanji's face twitched in fear. Xian Daoya nurtured me before, but he killed me when I wasn't paying attention. However, I left behind my eyes. If you can find them, you can revive me. I am filled with hatred towards Xian Daoya, so if you can revive me, I will never rest until Xian Daoya is dead. The pressure on you will also decrease. Gu Tianxia stared at Zhou Xuanji and said slowly. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Why were they still thinking about reviving after dying? He couldn't help but recall the past. Were all the enemies he had killed really dead? Alright, I hope that the next time we meet, I'll be alive to see you. Gu Tianxia said as he waved his hand. Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji's consent, he shattered the virtual world. Boom! Zhou Xuanji woke up as though he had just woken up from a dream. The firelight shone on his face. He found himself lying on the ground, surrounded by trees and a bright moon hanging in the night sky. He turned his head and saw malicious Buddha sitting not far away. His doppelgangers were no longer there. The malicious Buddha noticed that he had woken up, but he did not care. He held a piece of yellow skin in his hand and examined it carefully. Zhou Xuanji did not speak and silently sized up the malicious Buddha. This guy was really ugly. Thinking about emissary Li Qing's tragic death, Zhou Xuanji could not suppress the fury in his heart. One day, he would make the malicious Buddha die a horrible death. You want to kill me? The malicious Buddha asked without even batting an eye. Zhou Xuanji did not reply. Even though he was furious, he was not stupid. Contradicting malicious Buddha now would only make him suffer. Malicious Buddha continued to stare at the yellow skin and said softly, I understand your feelings. In fact, I feel even more pain than you do. Do you know why I turned from a Buddha to a demon? It's because a Buddha can't change anything. He can't save others, and he can't save himself either. If he becomes a demon, he will have nothing to fear. That's the strongest state. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. What villain doesn't have a reason? However, no reason is enough to stop you from taking revenge on the world. You're a sword cultivator, so if you become a demon, you will definitely be very powerful. I've seen a sword demon before, and that fellow was incredibly powerful. If he was still alive, he would definitely be one of the top 10 existences in the Great Thousand World, the malicious Buddha said as he continued to laugh. It was as if he had opened a chatterbox, and he began to speak endlessly, praising the sword demon. Zhou Xuanji did not want to become a demon. He had a wife and daughter, as well as people he cared about, and he did not want to harm them. Looking at Devil Emperor Dugu, even though he usually looked like he had everything under control and was very gentle, after ascending, he often became bedeviled. The malicious Buddha picked up the yellow skin and waved it at Zhou Xuanji as he smiled and said, "Do you know what this is?" Zhou Xuanji said grumpily, "Your bottom skin?" The malicious Buddha chuckled and said, "The skin of the ancient immortal clan." The ancient immortal clan are true immortal gods, and every piece of skin and hair contains the power of heavenly law. I'm researching why they are immortal gods. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "You're so powerful, could it be that you're inferior to immortal gods?" The malicious Buddha loudly laughed, his tone filled with condescension. "The ancient immortal clan has already declined. I just want to research the power of heavenly law. Do you believe that someone can stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law?" His tone became fervent. "Stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law?" Zhou Xuanji casually replied, "Of course, heavenly law is just a type of rule. When one is powerful enough to become a rule, that is the heavenly law. If one can surpass the rule, one can surpass heavenly law. However, there are many realms above heavenly law, and they are endless." He had read many xianxia novels in his previous life, and it was not difficult for him to make up a story. One of his favorite xianxia novels was Ren Wuxia. Back then, when he saw the main character reach the saint realm and stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law, he felt incredibly delighted. In the end, the saint realm was just the beginning, and it was incredibly awesome. This was especially so when he saw the main character become a supreme heavenly emperor, transcending time and space and creating everything. He was incredibly impressed. Fortunately, that fellow had not transmigrated, or else, there were still ways to survive as a storyteller in the other world. Of course, it was impossible to become an immortal because the main characters that this fellow wrote were all very arrogant. Those with personalities would be beaten to death on the path of cultivation. Oh. The heavenly law is a rule? Malicious Buddha's eyes lit up, and he seemed to be lost in thought. He seemed to have thought of something, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Zhou Xuanji saw that there was hope. He immediately started talking nonsense. Tao can be Tao, but it's not a Tao. Heaven is Tao, earth is Tao, Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, three begets all things. The malicious Buddha frowned but did not interrupt him. Zhou Xuanji bragged without thinking, and he felt great about it. "How is it? Are you scared now?" Malicious Buddha said with a look of disdain, "What are you talking about? Are you trying to fool a child?" Zhou Xuanji was stunned. The hegemon sword emperor was enlightened by these words, but this guy did not fall for it. He changed the topic and asked, "Where is the demonic emperor?" The malicious Buddha replied, "Somewhere very far away." "How far?" "Far beyond your imagination." "How far is that?" "I told you, you can't imagine it." "Then tell me." Malicious Buddha turned to look at Zhou Xuanji with a savage smile and killing intent. Zhou Xuanji kept his mouth shut. He prayed in his heart that Xian Daoya would come quickly. Only then would he be able to leave amidst the chaos. If malicious Buddha found the demonic emperor, Xian Daoya would have no chance of winning. The night deepened. Flames flickered between the two of them, and malicious Buddha turned his attention back to the yellow skin. The night passed. When the first ray of sunlight fell, malicious Buddha still had no intention of getting up. Zhou Xuanji could not help but ask, "Why aren't you leaving?" Malicious Buddha said calmly, "Waiting for Xian Daoya." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This guy knew that Xian Daoya was coming? Chapter 443. Malicious Buddha said that he would wait for Xian Daoya, so he stopped. Zhou Xuanji did not know where he was and how far he was from the demonic emperor. He began to recover his magic energy. Malicious Buddha did not seal his cultivation. It seemed that this guy was really arrogant and was not afraid of him escaping. When it was close to noon, Malicious Buddha left with Zhou Xuanji. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji noticed that they did not fly very fast. This guy was still waiting for Xian Daoya. 3 days later, the two landed before a cliff. Malicious Buddha put him down and stood by the cliff without saying a word. Zhou Xuanji sat down and ignored him. An hour later. "Come out," Malicious Buddha said. "How long are you going to follow me? Are the people of the great Emperor Dao court all scoundrels like you?" Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. Finally, a gust of cold wind blew. The sky was cloudless, and there was no one else in sight. TSK. Malicious Buddha, I didn't expect someone like you to become the demonic emperor's lackey. You said that your life is greater than the heavens and that your strength can surpass saints. What a joke. Xian Daoya's mocking laughter came, and the temperature in the surroundings plummeted. Zhou Xuanji remained calm and waited for the battle to begin. However, Emperor Zhao said that Xian Daoya was not powerful and might be suppressed by Malicious Buddha. Soon, Xian Daoya appeared on the opposite cliff and looked at Malicious Buddha. Their eyes met, and the corner of Malicious Buddha's mouth rose. Clones appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Xian Daoya. Zhou Xuanji always felt that these clones were alive, like Malicious Buddha's twin brothers. Of course, this was nonsense. How could Malicious Buddha's mother give birth to so many at once? Or maybe she was not human. Zhou Xuanji's imagination ran wild and made malicious guesses about Malicious Buddha. Malicious Buddha laughed coldly and said, "Xian Daoya, I advise you to leave the great Emperor Dao court. You work so hard for them, but they never help you recover your body. You are not even recognized by the heavenly law. Why do you need to work so hard? You just don't understand," Xian Daoya said calmly. Malicious Buddha pointed at Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile, "You want to possess him? Back then, you treated Gu Tianxia like this. But that brat is powerful, and you are asking for trouble." Zhou Xuanji frowned. "Xian Daoya wants to possess me?" He took a closer look and found that Xian Daoya's expression was indeed a bit unnatural. Xian Daoya pulled out a spine from his sleeve. It was white with many black lines. He held the long bone in his hand and waved it lightly. Black cyclones appeared out of thin air around him. Then, countless skeletons rose up. There were human bones, demon bones, and even the skeletons of giants the size of mountains. A great battle was about to break out. Zhou Xuanji called out to Gu Tianxia in his mind. Unfortunately, Gu Tianxia did not answer. He was not worried. If Gu Tianxia wanted to live, he could only rely on him. The clones of the Malicious Buddha charged towards Xian Daoya. Xian Daoya disappeared into thin air, and the skeleton army that he summoned started fighting against the clones of the Malicious Buddha. Boom! 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 Explosions rang out one after another, and the cliff collapsed, sending dust and dirt flying everywhere. Zhou Xuanji quickly retreated far away from the battlefield. The Malicious Buddha did not follow him closely, as if he was not worried that he would escape. "Xian Daoya, do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're immortal? Today, I will suppress you and let you have a taste of eternity of boredom and loneliness." The Malicious Buddha laughed wildly. He raised his arms horizontally, and 2 black orbs of light shot out from his palms. Lightning coiled around them, shaking the space. A violent gale blew and gathered around the black orbs, forming a powerful gale. Even though Zhou Xuanji was 1,000 meters away, his clothes were still fluttering in the wind. Still not escaping? Zhou Xuanji cried out in his heart. The malicious Buddha was powerful indeed. Just his aura alone made him feel like his soul was about to leave his body. One must know that he was already an 8th revolution golden immortal. It was hard to imagine how powerful the malicious Buddha was. Xian Daoya suddenly appeared above the malicious Buddha's head. With the bone whip in his right hand, he lashed out with great force, causing the air to explode. The malicious Buddha dodged it easily and swung his palms. The 2 black orbs exploded straight away, giving off a dazzling radiance that caused the heavens and earth to lose their colors. The 2 of them were engulfed by it. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt dizzy, as though the world was spinning. The next second, he lost consciousness. A shaking sensation woke Zhou Xuanji up, and he opened his eyes slowly. He was shocked to find himself lying in a prison cart. His white shirt was torn and covered in blood. His face was also covered in blood stains. He wanted to move but found that he was powerless, and his magic energy was depleted. We can reach Lujiang City in another 800 miles. The Center God province is really chaotic recently. The Dao Heaven sect lord was severely injured, and the Divine Cliff suffered countless casualties. The Cliff Lord even died suddenly. I heard that it's all because of Zhou Xuanji. Who did Zhou Xuanji offend? This is the bane of Lone Star. Whoever gets close to him will be unlucky. The surrounding soldiers discussed among themselves as they moved forward. Zhou Xuanji frowned slightly and glanced at a beggar girl beside him. The girl was covered in dirt and gave off an indescribable stench. Her hair was a mess, and she was sleeping at the corner of the prison cart. What's going on? This is... Zhou Xuanji felt dizzy, as though his head was going to explode. He began to heal himself. The soldiers noticed that he had woken up and began to tease him. At that moment, a general riding a tiger-patterned horse came near the prison cart and asked, "Tell me your name. Which sect are you from?" This general only had 6 tribulation scattered immortal cultivation. Because Zhou Xuanji was heavily injured and did not have any magic energy, in his eyes, he was like a mortal and posed no threat at all. This prison cart was made of special wood and was extremely sturdy. There were restrictions within, and even great tribulation scattered immortals would find it difficult to break through. Zhou Xuanji replied, "I'm called Zhou Menglang from the Heavenly Hall. I was attacked by enemies when I went out to train." Heavenly Hall. The general and soldiers' expressions slightly changed, but they did not panic. The Heavenly Hall was quite far away from here. They were not afraid of the Heavenly Hall. The general warned, "I advise you not to think about escaping. The nearby area is filled with demons. If you run around with your current injuries, you will only die miserably." After saying this, he rode to the front of the group. Zhou Xuanji noticed that there were over 1,000 soldiers in the group, and there were close to 100 prison carts, holding humans and demons. He wondered where these people wanted to take him. He was not afraid. Even though he did not have magic energy, he still had his legendary sword. He stealthily took out the ultimate grade beast bag and let Bai Suan out, allowing her to hide in his embrace. Bai Suan sent a telepathic message, "I can't hold it in anymore." Her tone was filled with resentment. Zhou Xuanji had no choice. The Divine Cliff had been attacked, and he did not have much time to think. He could only forcefully put Bai Suan into the ultimate grade beast bag, and he did not have the opportunity to take her out again. He comforted her a little before continuing to heal himself. At that moment, the beggar girl, who was in the same prison cart as him, woke up. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was healing himself, she was pleasantly surprised before feeling guilty. She said carefully, "I'm sorry, I wanted to save you, but I did not expect to encounter people from the Sovereign Demon sect." Chapter 444. Thank you for saving me. You said that this is the territory of the Sovereign Demon sect? Can you tell me about it? Zhou Xuanji looked at the beggar girl and thanked her before asking. This girl was kind after all. How could he blame her? At the same time, he was shocked in his heart. The Tianxia map's movement was horrifying. Even someone as powerful as him felt as though his body was about to be torn apart. The beggar girl heaved a sigh of relief and said, "This is the south of the Center God province, near the Cloud Devil Pool. Recently, for some reason, the demon race outside the Center God province began to invade. The sovereign demon sect is fighting against them, and we will be captured as slaves to dig spirit stones and treasures for them." Zhou Xuanji nodded and began thinking. From today onwards, he would be hunted down by the demonic emperor and the great emperor Dao court. He would remember what happened to the divine cliff and seek revenge in the future. But the most important thing now was to figure out what to do next. His initial goal after ascending was to cultivate hard and reach the true God stage as soon as possible before returning to protect the northern wilderness region. But now, he had become a stray dog. The world was so vast, but where should he go? His only advantage was that his fate was unpredictable, so his enemies could not divine him. Forget it. Just like before, he would find a secluded place to cultivate and search for the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. He sighed. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Whenever he thought about emissary Li Qing and Han Shuzi, he could not control the murderous intent in his heart. Ever since he came to the northern wilderness region, the Divine Cliff was the first faction that treated him well. Tanhua sect did not count, it was only forced by Xian Xianghua. He thought about Xian Xianghua again. He did not know where that old demonic woman was and whether she was safe. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was depressed, the beggar girl blamed herself even more. She came to Zhou Xuanji's side and comforted him softly, "I will surely save you. Let me heal you." After that, she stretched out her right hand and pressed on Zhou Xuanji's palm. In that instant, a wave of coolness seeped into Zhou Xuanji's body, making him feel refreshed. He looked at her in astonishment. Because there were too many people around, it was not convenient for him to take out the Holy Light Redemption Sword. He did not expect this girl to know healing techniques. However, this technique's healing ability was not very powerful. It was considered a divine technique for those below the spirit refinement stage. Zhou Xuanji asked, "You have such a technique, so why are you in such dire straits? If she opened a clinic, she wouldn't be so poor." The beggar girl whispered, "I'm protecting myself. You can call me Little Chan." She sounded a little excited. Judging from Zhou Xuanji's tone, it was evident that he did not reject her. She began to make small calculations. It was difficult for a person to survive alone. She wanted to rope Zhou Xuanji in and make him her subordinate. This way, she would have someone to protect her. The more she thought about it, the happier she became. Zhou Xuanji was confused by her passionate attitude, but he did not say much. Then, he shut his mouth and focused on his cultivation. Xiao Chan didn't disturb him. As he cultivated, he paid attention to the conversation of the soldiers. 10 days had passed since the attack on the Divine Cliff, and this matter had shaken the Center God province. Even overlord forces like the Divine Cliff and the Dao Heaven sect had been attacked one after another. If it had been any other force, would they have been flattened in a short period of time? Panic spread throughout the Center God province. All the cultivators were discussing who had attacked the Divine Cliff and the Dao Heaven sect. After Zhou Xuanji heard about the Divine Cliff situation, he felt even worse. The team continued to trek across mountains and rivers. The reason why they didn't fly was because they wanted to capture more slaves along the way. Zhou Xuanji saw the demons as well. Those demons looked like humans but were not. They had the characteristics of other living creatures, and the demonic qi surrounding them was visible to the naked eye. At the same cultivation stage, demons were generally more powerful than humans. Moreover, they were violent and could hardly control their emotions, just like wild beasts. A day later, Zhou Xuanji was prepared to leave. He got up slowly and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword. He held it in a backhand grip, and the blade cut his arm. He looked down at Xiao Chan and asked, "Do you want to come with me?" Xiao Chan, who was half asleep, rubbed her eyes and mumbled, "What are you thinking about? You should be the one coming with me." Boom! The 9-flame chimera demon sword appeared beside Zhou Xuanji suddenly. A horrifying energy exploded and destroyed the prison carriage. Xiao Chan was so shocked that she lost her sleepiness immediately. She was sent flying away by the 9-flame chimera demon's energy. Fortunately, the sky-dominating divine sword appeared behind her in time and caught her with its blade. Zhou Xuanji stood on the wind-cutter sword, and numerous legendary swords appeared around him. He ignored the terrified soldiers and flew toward a certain direction on the river of swords. Xiao Chan was sucked by the sky-dominating divine sword and followed closely behind him. "Stop!" The leading general cried out and charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his saber drawn. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss turned around and slashed. Countless evil ghosts charged out, and the general was so frightened that he turned around and ran. Xiao Chan opened her eyes wide. Seeing those evil ghosts, she was dumbfounded. Could Zhou Xuanji be a demon? Her expression turned into despair. After flying for 6 hours, Zhou Xuanji stopped in a bamboo forest. He began cultivating with the Holy Light Redemption sword in hand. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and 9-flame Chimera Demon sword landed beside him to protect him. He stored the other legendary swords into the supreme storage. After Xiao Chan landed, she kept her distance from Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji said without opening his eyes, "You can leave now. Head east, and there's a city 300 miles away." Xiao Chan was stunned and fell into a dilemma. Although Zhou Xuanji did not look like a kind person, if she left Zhou Xuanji, she might be captured by the sovereign demon sect and become a slave again. "Can I stay?" "I can be your maidservant," she said carefully. Zhou Xuanji said without hesitation, "Impossible. We don't owe each other anything. It's time for you to leave." Xiao Chan's cultivation was too weak, and her healing spells were not enough. She would only be a burden if he kept her by his side. Next, he planned to find a place to continue his closed-door cultivation and break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. Xiao Chan said anxiously, "Bring me along. Although I'm not powerful enough, I know the southern region of the Center God Province very well. You will surely need my help in some way." Zhou Xuanji frowned and did not reply immediately. Xiao Chan sat down obediently and did not dare to disturb him. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji's injuries were completely healed. His soul was not injured, and the injuries on his body did not spread to his inner pellet and astral infant. He left with Xiao Chan. He flew at full speed all the way and finally found a forest with relatively abundant spiritual qi. He used the divine sword to open up a cave and used a sealing technique to seal the entrance of the cave. He let Bai Suwen out and said, "The two of you stay in the cave and cultivate. Before I come out from my closed-door cultivation, don't go out." Xiao Chan heard him and looked a little bitter. Closed-door cultivation? How long would that take? Zhou Xuanji ignored her and sat down immediately. He took out the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl and continued his cultivation. To prevent any accidents, he took out the ancient god sword and placed it beside him. Although the 9 souls did not come out, they could communicate with him spiritually. He told the 9 souls about what happened during this period of time. Emperor Zhao was amazed and said, "How pathetic. Brother, let me revive. If I revive, I will fight for the position of the sovereign demon sect lord. At that time, I will help you hide the news so that you can hide in peace. At the same time, I will help you find the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 445. Hearing Emperor Zhao's suggestion, Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart, "How can I help you revive?" Emperor Zhao fell silent. Saber Monarch Dong Hai sneered. Gu Tianxia left his eyes as a medium, "But what about you? The Eternal Emperor is nothing more than this. Emperor Zhao was furious, and he started bickering with Saber Monarch Dong Hai. Zhou Xuanji then asked Sovereign Xian how he died. Venerable Xian hesitated for a while before saying, "I want to know how strong the heavenly Tao is. I flew to the 36th heaven and was destroyed by the heavenly Tao." Zhou Xuanji was stunned, and the other 8 souls also fell silent. What an embarrassing way to die. So you're committing suicide? Emperor Zhao sighed, his tone filled with mockery. In any case, they had no other choice. Venerable Xian was digging his own grave. However, this also proved that Xian Zun was very strong. Otherwise, why would he challenge the heavenly path? Dao Lord Xiantian asked, "Your name has Xiantian in it. Have you heard of me?" Sovereign Xian asked, "Who are you?" Dao Lord Xiantian fell silent. Zhou Xuanji conversed with them as he absorbed the Dao fetus red loath pearl's spirit qi. Xiao Chan chatted with Bai Suan. Both of them were girls, so it was easy for them to get along. Lu Wuji's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, "Your current situation is indeed troublesome, but it is not hopeless. Magistrate Chui is right, you should go and find the 18 divine swords. Although malicious Buddha is powerful, he is still a demon and does not dare to get close to the divine swords. The demonic emperor did not act personally, so there must be a reason. As for the other experts of the great Emperor Dao Court, there are ways to deal with them. There are many people like you, such as Devil Emperor Dugu, Marquis, Great Emperor Wuwang, and many others. You can think of a way to draw out some of the hidden geniuses or revive us. Our revival will be able to draw the attention of the great Emperor Dao Court and the demonic emperor." Although his words were filled with selfishness, they were indeed reasonable. Zhou Xuanji still had another question. The demonic emperor should be your junior. Why is he so powerful that the malicious Buddha is willing to serve him? Lu Wuji replied, "He became a devil. No one knows exactly why. Becoming a demon." Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of the malicious Buddha's words. Becoming a demon would make one stronger? Why didn't the sovereign demon sect and the demon race dominate the great thousand world? He couldn't figure it out, so he stopped thinking about it. For the next period of time, malicious Buddha and Xian Daoya did not come again. At first, Zhou Xuanji was a little worried, but he soon calmed down. It seemed like Xian Daoya couldn't calculate his whereabouts and could only rely on asking around. 1.5 years later, Zhou Xuanji turned 100 years old. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 100 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Armageddon, Holy Light Divine Shadow Sword, Heavenly Soul, Chaotic God Demon Seeking Sword, Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes, and joy flashed in his eyes. His 100th birthday was indeed incredible, directly giving him a world-destroying godly sword. Information about the 2 swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Holy Light Divine Shadow Sword Grade, Armageddon. Description, the Sword of Holy Light. When the sword is drawn, divine shadows will dance between the heavens and earth. It possesses the power to destroy the world and can create extreme illusions in battle. Only golden immortals and above can use it. Sword name, Chaotic God Demon Seeking Sword Level, Heavenly Soul. Description, this sword was forged by the will of the gods and demons. Those who are not mentally strong should not use it. Sword of Holy Light? Could it be a series? Zhou Xuanji thought of the Holy Light Redemption Sword and took it out. A dazzling radiance appeared and illuminated the entire cave. Xiao Chan and Bai Suan turned around in shock. It was a sword of light. The blade was very wide, and it was 1.5 meters long. He could feel the warmth of the sword in his hand. He waved the sword gently, and the sword chi swept out, directly colliding with the wall. A crack appeared, and the whole mountain trembled. Zhou Xuanji quickly stored the sword. Facing Xiao Chan and Bai Suan's gazes, he closed his eyes straightaway and did not explain. Xiao Chan already knew Zhou Xuanji's identity. Even with Zhou Xuanji's warning, Biyao still spilled the beans. Ever since she knew about this, Xiao Qian was dead set on Zhou Xuanji. The Sword Emperor is indeed the Sword Emperor. Even a random sword is so cool, she praised. It was a pity that her flattery was not reciprocated. Zhou Xuanji began to receive Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. When he finished the inheritance, he became excited. This sword technique could become his most powerful sword technique. More accurately, it would be his most powerful divine ability. He used his soul power to control his sword so that they could attack the enemies near him. The range was controlled by him, and with the help of the heavenly law's celestial power, each sword would radiate with a celestial radiance. Heavenly law's celestial power. He immediately got up and left to cultivate this divine ability. Xiao Qian and Biyao eyes brightened and followed him. After staying in this cave for a year and a half, they were almost suffocated. In the forest, Zhou Xuanji took out all his legendary swords and began practicing. Don't go too far away. If you expose yourself, I will abandon you without hesitation because you are seeking death. Zhou Xuanji warned, which frightened Xiao Qian so much that she stuck out her tongue. Biyao, on the other hand, did not care at all. Sword Sect Immortal Cry was a divine ability without any sword moves. After he inherited the qi circulation technique and the method to mobilize the heavenly law's celestial power, he quickly learned it. At first, he controlled 10 swords. After the heavenly law's celestial power was injected into them, each of them glowed with a silver radiance and circled around him at high speed. With a thought, the legendary swords slashed toward a small mountain. With a loud boom, the small mountain was pulverized. Since he mastered the 10,000 sword dragon incantation, it was not difficult for him to learn Sword Sect Immortal Cry. However, the heavenly law's celestial power was extremely domineering. It was even more powerful than the world's energy. He could not control the legendary swords precisely. 10 days later, Zhou Xuanji completely mastered Sword Sect Immortal Cry. He captured Xiao Qian and Biyao and returned to the cave to continue cultivating. Half a year later, he successfully broke through to 9th Revolution Golden Immortal. 2 years later, he broke through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal. The Dao Fetus Red Loath Pearl was completely absorbed and turned into dust. The further he progressed, the faster he absorbed. He felt that it had something to do with the heavenly law's celestial power. Ever since he learned Sword Sect Immortal Cry, his cultivation grew faster and faster. In 2.5 years, he obtained 3 legendary swords. They were the Tridao Sword, Caged Wolf Sword, and Pompous Sword. All of them were amethyst. Apparently, the Armageddon Legendary Sword and Sword Sect Immortal Cry had used up all his luck. After the breakthrough, Zhou Xuanji felt refreshed and left with Xiao Qian and Biyao. Where are we going next? Xiao Qian asked curiously. She looked back at the cave, which was the place where she stayed for 4 years. In these 4 years, she had maintained the appearance of a beggar. Although she washed her face and body, revealing her delicate and pretty face, Zhou Xuanji did not give her new clothes, which made her quite depressed. Her storage ring had long been taken away by the sovereign demon sect's demonic disciples. Zhou Xuanji looked at the horizon and said, "Search for the 18 divine swords." As a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, he felt that he was comparable to a Void Extreme Immortal. But compared to the malicious Buddha, he was still far from it. "I know a place. There's an old immortal who has lived for countless years. He lives in seclusion in the mountains. He might know the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." Xiao Qian said excitedly. Having heard her, Zhou Xuanji took out the truth sword and placed it on her shoulder. The blade grazed her skin lightly. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 446. Xiao Qian was stunned. A slight pain came from her right shoulder, and her eyes turned red immediately as though she was about to cry. "You don't believe me?" she asked, biting her lip lightly. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "Is what you said true?" What is the background of that old immortal? Xiao Chan felt extremely wronged, which turned into anger. Of course it's true. What good do I get from harming you? No one knows the background of that old immortal. He saved me when I was in danger and taught me cultivation. He is a man of virtue and will never harm anyone. Zhou Xuanji stored the truth sword and said with a smile, I'm just teasing you. Xiao Chan was still angry. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with grievance and anger in her eyes, as though she was about to cry at any moment. Bai Suan flew to her shoulder and said with a smile, he's worried that you will be bewitched by powerful enemies with divine abilities. Do you know how powerful the enemies he is facing are? They can kill someone from thousands of miles away. The grand teacher who nurtured him since he was young was the reincarnation of the enemy's soul. That grand teacher raised his mother, which means that he started to scheme from birth. Xiao Chan heard her and opened her eyes wide. She shuddered in fear. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with pity in her eyes. Zhou Xuanji did not explain but asked her to lead the way. He flew on his sword with Xiao Chan in front of him. He held her shoulder while Bai Suan looked around in his arms. Along the way, they often saw battles. The sovereign demons sect and the demons fought everywhere. They captured civilians and made life difficult for them. There were mortals in the Great Thousand World, but their physiques were generally stronger than those in the mortal realm. The time when the demons attacked the Center God province was very close to the time when Zhou Xuanji's identity was exposed. He had to think about it. For days later, they flew out of the sovereign demon sect's territory. In the Center God province, there was only one sovereign power, and that was the Great Heaven God dynasty. Under the Great Heaven God dynasty, there were no other empires or kingdoms. It was a great crime to establish a dynasty without permission. The Great Heaven God dynasty had vast influence. In terms of territory, it was definitely the largest in the Center God province. However, the mortal realm was not under their control but was controlled by sects and clans. No one knew the name of the old immortal that Xiao Chan mentioned. He was in the forest south of the Great Heaven God dynasty. The place was filled with miasma, but the demons were generally weak. They were probably afraid of him. Zhou Xuanji walked carefully and avoided contact with any strangers, including demons. Along the way, he sent Bai Suan to the cities to gather information. After malicious Buddha attacked the Divine Cliff, he did not reappear, and the Divine Cliff and Tao Heaven sect regained their peace. The world continued to spin, but the Divine Cliff was greatly weakened and was suppressed by the surrounding factions. Zhou Xuanji wanted to help, but he could not. What was worth mentioning was that Shishenzong had not died. He had helped the Divine Cliff before, but he had been encountered by the Hegemon Sword Emperor and taken away. There were too many things to do in the Center God province, and the northern wilderness region was too small compared to it. The information that Bai Suan could gather was limited. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt the need to create an intelligence organization that was hidden in the dark. One day, he suddenly stopped. Because he sensed a familiar aura. Bai Hao Yisan. With a flash of inspiration, he immediately followed the aura and rushed over. 100 kilometers away, on a hill, Bai Hao Yisan lay down in satisfaction. There were 6 flirtatious women sitting beside him, laughing and chatting happily. Zhou Xuanji landed on the summit suddenly. He hid his aura with the chi-obscuring incantation, but Bai Hao Yisan could sense Bai Suan and Xiao Chan's auras. The enchanting fragrance of a young girl, Bai Hao Yisan looked up in fascination and saw Zhou Xuanji. He was so shocked that he jumped up immediately, causing the women to scream. He looked at Zhou Xuanji warily and said with a low voice, "Brat, why are you here?" He cursed in his heart. His luck was too bad. It was not easy for him to sneak out to have fun without Feng Gyul nagging him. And now, he encountered this little fiend. "Where's Feng Gyul?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. Bai Hao Yisan curled his lip and said, "He's cultivating with this emperor's revered teacher." "Why? Aren't you afraid that this emperor's revered teacher will discover you?" He really wants to deal with you. He glanced at Xiao Chan and Bai Suan and sighed in his heart. This brat was so lucky. Especially that little white snake. He immediately guessed that it was the 9-heaven divine snake. When she transformed, she would definitely be devastatingly beautiful. After the 9-heaven divine snake transformed, she would be handsome and beautiful. Just thinking about it made him excited. Zhou Xuanji's heart trembled. Biyao Isen's revered teacher? His expression did not change as he said, Biyao Isen, we have no enmity. Why don't we work together? Work together? Biyao Isen straightened his back immediately and said proudly, why should this emperor work together with you? Zhou Xuanji said with squinted eyes, there must be a reason for you to descend to the mortal realm. But you suffered so much in the mortal realm. Evidently, someone is plotting against you. If we work together in secret, we will still be enemies. But secretly, we can exchange information and help each other. Biyao Isen heard him and was infuriated. He thought of Xian Daoya. That old bastard. Actually, back at Juadi Cliff, he was already convinced by Zhou Xuanji. He admired Zhou Xuanji's courage and righteousness. It was not bad to work together with this brat. As for his revered teacher, how could he defeat Zhou Xuanji in his current state? Biyao Isen looked at the beauties beside him and said, wait for this emperor in the forest. The beauties curled their lips and left reluctantly. Zhou Xuanji also sent Xiao Chan and Bai Suan away to show his sincerity. The two walked up to each other and did not put up their guard. Zhou Xuanji spoke first, you and I are both from the northern wilderness, and we get along so well. Let me talk about my current enemies first. He mentioned Xian Daoya, the demonic emperor, and the malicious Buddha. When he heard about Xian Daoya, Biyao Isen opened his eyes wide and almost cursed out. That old bastard again. After Zhou Xuanji finished speaking, Biyao Isen harumphed and said, sure. This emperor wants to deal with Xian Daoya too. Zhou Xuanji told him about his plan again. He also promised to bring in Emperor Zhao, Gu Tianxia, Devil Emperor Dugu, Lu Wuji, Marquis, and the others to form a powerful secret faction that could fight against the great Emperor Dao Court. In this faction, they would be on equal footing and would not have to risk their lives for each other. They would help each other if they could, but they could not hide any information. Biyao Isen was shocked and said in astonishment, Emperor Zhao, Gu Tianxia, Lu Wuji, Saber Monarch Donghai, Demon Lord Ryuan, Emperor Hanlin, Emperor Tsunghai, and Ghost Emperor Zhang Tian, aren't they all dead? Zhou Xuanji smiled mysteriously, the world also thinks that the malicious Buddha doesn't exist. Biyao Isen fell silent. After that, the two promised each other the first information mission. Zhou Xuanji would help Biyao Isen keep an eye on Xian Daoya, while he would help Zhou Xuanji investigate the 18 divine swords. After chatting, Zhou Xuanji left. Biyao Isen stood where he was. His expression became calm and was no longer as frivolous as before. His eyes sparkled as he mumbled, Zhou Xuanji, very good. I hope you won't disappoint me. Today's conversation gave him a deeper understanding of Zhou Xuanji. It was too difficult to think of this guy. On the other side, Xiao Chan and Bai Suan asked who Biyao Isen was. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly, don't ask what you shouldn't ask, or else I will silence you. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 447. After encountering Biyao Isen, Zhou Xuanji and the other two continued toward the old immortal. A month later, they finally arrived at their destination. The three landed and looked toward the direction where they were looking. The undulating mountain range was shrouded in dense fog. From afar, it looked mysterious and beautiful. Xiao Chan said, let's walk over quietly. The old immortal likes peace and does not like to be disturbed. Zhou Xuanji nodded and followed her with Bai Suan. Half an hour later, the three of them arrived in front of a Daoist temple. This Daoist temple was not big, with vegetables, flowers, and fruits planted on both sides. A cat as fat as a pig was lying on the ground, napping, and a strange sandalwood fragrance wafted out from the Taoist temple. Xiao Chan walked to the gate and said respectfully, "Old immortal, I'm back." She had been with the old immortal for decades and had always respected him. "Come in." A benevolent and old voice came. Next, the gate of the Taoist temple opened abruptly, which frightened the fat cat. Zhou Xuanji raised his brows slightly. This voice made his heart shudder. He began to look forward to it. It seemed that this old immortal had a profound cultivation. After entering the temple, Zhou Xuanji finally saw the old immortal. He wore a white robe and looked like an immortal. He sat on a cattail hassock with his eyes closed and a horsetail whisk in his hand. Looking at him, Zhou Xuanji thought of Taichu Yudao somehow. Xiao Chan giggled, "Old immortal, I brought 2 friends here. You won't mind, right? I owe him my life." The old immortal opened his eyes and smiled, "It's okay. I'm also interested in the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji, who has shaken the world recently." With this, Zhou Xuanji and Xiao Chan's expressions changed. The old immortal glanced at Bai Suan and said with a smile, "You received the help of the 9-heaven divine snake right after you ascended. My little friend Xuanji, your luck is much higher than those before you." Zhou Xuanji now believed that this old immortal was not simple. He might not be any weaker than Han Shuzi. He cupped his fist and asked, "Old immortal, you know my identity, but do you know my background?" The old immortal nodded and said, "The 18 divine swords are not easy to find. Only one has seen the light of day in the Center God province. It's controlled by a powerful cultivator who is on par with the malicious Buddha. I advise you to give up." On par with the malicious Buddha? Zhou Xuanji cursed in his heart. Where did so many powerful cultivators come from? The old immortal said leisurely, "I understand your predicament. You only need to stay here for 3 years, and this situation will be resolved. From then on, you will be able to fly as high as a bird and roam the world. Although there will not be any danger, at least the demonic emperor and great emperor Dao court will not cause trouble for you." Xiao Chan and Bai Suan were pleasantly surprised. Zhou Xuanji was quite curious and asked, "Can old immortal explain?" If it could really be solved, then there was no need to rush to find the 18 divine swords. The old immortal shook his head and said, "The vegetables in the garden are ripe. Help me pick them." With that, he closed his eyes and said no more. Zhou Xuanji frowned but did not say anything. He turned around and left. Xiao Chan bowed and left the Taoist temple. The doors of the Taoist temple were closed, as if they were rejecting guests. As Zhou Xuanji cut vegetables, he took out the ancient god's sword. He pretended that he was cutting vegetables, but he was actually communicating with the 9 souls. Yo, brother Zhou is getting worse by the day." Emperor Zhao added insult to injury, which made Zhou Xuanji roll his eyes. He repeated the old immortal's words and wanted to see how the 9 souls would guess. Lu Wuji said, "So it's him. Listen to him. No one dares to hurt you here." Emperor Hanlin sighed in amazement, "Your luck. I'm impressed." Zhou Xuanji heard him and quickly asked about the old immortal's identity, but the 9 souls did not reply. He could only stay patiently. After he finished harvesting the vegetables, the old immortal asked Xiao Chan to bring him into the temple. He asked Zhou Xuanji to find a place to cultivate and wait for the 3 years to pass. This place was quite peaceful. Although the spiritual qi was not abundant, it was not bad either. It was suitable for cultivation. He focused on sword sect immortal ghost weep. The celestial power of the heavenly law was powerful, but other than using this divine ability, it was difficult for him to activate it directly. It was a strange feeling. He had already grasped the technique, but he could not control it. Time passed quickly. A year later, above the 33rd heaven, the great emperor's steel trembled, and 2 men in black appeared before it. A name appeared on the 10th place, pushing Zhou Xuanji down to the 13th place. Emperor Jundao. Emperor Jundao. 10th on the Great Emperor Stele. How can it be? Another first-class Great Emperor. How long has it been since Zhou Xuanji appeared? This is too horrifying. What's going on in this era? The two men in black cried out in shock. Shortly after, they disappeared before the Great Emperor Stele. Within 7 days, Emperor Jundao's name resounded across the world. A genius who was even more overpowered than Zhou Xuanji appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, the entire world was discussing this person. Emperor Jundao? Such a domineering name. Could he have ascended from the mortal realm too? No, he must be a genius nurtured by some overlord-level faction. Yeah, how can there be so many geniuses in the mortal realm? Tisk tsk. Now that Zhou Xuanji is nowhere to be found, what will happen to this Emperor Jundao be? Another first-class great emperor. Such a commotion was just like Zhou Xuanji's, but even more so because Zhou Xuanji was ahead of him. Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword and returned to the old immortal's temple. He had been frowning. Every 2 months, he would go to the nearby cities to gather information. Naturally, he knew about Emperor Jundao's situation. He was not jealous of Emperor Jundao but pondered over the old immortal's words. Could this be the solution he was talking about? Emperor Jundao's ranking was higher than his. How could the great Emperor Dao Court, demonic emperor, and malicious Buddha not pay attention to him? However, the old immortal did not summon him, so he continued to cultivate. If he was too anxious, he would lose face instead. There were still 2 years left of the 3-year deadline, so he continued to wait. Half a year later, Emperor Jundao joined the Great Heaven God dynasty and became the emperor's confidant. He was high-spirited and looked down on all the heroes in the world. He did not even take Zhou Xuanji seriously. He claimed that he would surpass his predecessors and help the Great Heaven God dynasty become the overlord of the Great Thousand World. With this, rumors spread all over the world. Zhou Xuanji also heard about this. He was not angry but happy. Continue to be arrogant and do not stop. In the next year, just as the world expected, the Great Heaven God dynasty was attacked continuously. If not for the emperor's power, Emperor Jundao might have followed in Zhou Xuanji's footsteps. The Great Heaven God dynasty had no choice but to be more vigilant, and Emperor Jundao also began to cultivate in seclusion. What's worth mentioning is that the attacks of the demon race are getting stronger and stronger. The sovereign demon sect is starting to feel like they can't hold on anymore. Not only that, the demon race in the north is also getting restless. There was still half a year before the 3 years that the old immortal had mentioned. Zhou Xuanji felt that it was not enough. Monarch Jundao alone was not enough to resolve his crisis. Emperor Jundao? This kid is so arrogant. It seems like he has been spoiled. His master must have a profound background. Emperor Zhao muttered in Zhou Xuanji's mind. The other great beings' souls also guessed the same. If he came from the mortal realm and experienced countless hardships, how could he dare to be so arrogant? Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 448. Emperor Zhao, have you thought of a way to revive yourself? Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart as he looked at the fat cat not far away. This guy was lying on his back, basking in the sun. His bulging belly was exposed like a ball, making him want to step on it. Emperor Zhao said disappointedly, "How can I? Sigh, I'm too young. I never thought that I would die." If he were to be revived, he would surely be more arrogant than Emperor Jundao. Zhou Xuanji nodded and did not speak further. He continued to sense the heavenly law's celestial power. A few days ago, he reached 105 years old. 2.5 years passed. He obtained 6 legendary swords. They were the Evil Trust Sword, Saint Thief Sword, White Wall Sword, Phoenix Arching Sword, Shao Xian Sword, and Thorny Fish Sword. The highest was Heavenly Soul, which was not of much help to him. He had a deeper understanding of the heavenly law's celestial power, but he could not refine it as he pleased. As for cultivation, he fell behind. No matter how talented he was, it was too difficult to break through to void extreme immortal through cultivation. Without any special serendipity, he might need to cultivate for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years to succeed. Which void extreme immortal in the great thousand world was not tens of thousands of years old? The hegemon sword emperor was close to 20,000 years old. He only broke through early because of special serendipity and made a name for himself in the Center God province. Half a year later, if what the old immortal said was true, then he would need to search for the 18 divine swords in Xian Xianghua. Xiao Qian walked over quickly with a Ganoderma in her hand. This Ganoderma should have been nurtured for 10,000 years. It's filled with spiritual qi. Take it. She looked proud, as though she was asking him to praise her. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly before taking the Ganoderma and examining it carefully. Xiao Qian did not receive any compliments, so she curled her lip and left with a low snort. When she passed by the fat cat, she kicked its stomach. Meow, the fat cat cried out miserably and ran into the forest, twisting its butt. Zhou Xuanji laughed and stored the Ganoderma into the supreme storage before continuing to cultivate. 3 months later, a majestic voice resounded across the Center God province. The Center God province is the center of the great thousand world. Order is in chaos, and evil demons roam freely. I decided to lead the immortal gods to regain order in the Center God province. Evil demons shall not disturb us. 100 years later, I will open a preaching hall in the 9th heaven. All living beings in the world can come and listen to my teachings. Boom! The Center God province was in an uproar as countless exclamations sounded. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating, opened his eyes, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. Here it comes. Was this the opportunity that old immortal had mentioned? You must have learned some kind of divine art. I won't ask who taught it to you, but I hope that you will remember this. The heavenly law's immortal energy is still the heavenly law's immortal energy. Don't be greedy or you will dig your own grave. After that, he turned around and walked into the forest. As he walked, he shook his head and said, Heaven doesn't see the birth of all living things. My Tao came from the heavens. If we were to talk about who is the leader since ancient times, the heavenly saints, Buddhas, and demons are all conceded. Zhou Xuanji remembered this sentence and leaped up into the clouds. He sat down cross-legged and began to comprehend the heavenly law's celestial power. After a while, strands of heavenly law celestial energy descended from the sky and poured into his body, causing him to be wild with joy. He tried to continue flying, and he discovered that the higher he flew, the more heavenly law immortal power he sensed. Soon, an invisible barrier blocked his path. He looked up. The sky was still too high to reach, but he could not go any higher. 3 heavens. 33 heavens. Each heaven had a heavenly law restriction. With Zhou Xuanji's power, he could break through the first heaven. But after some thought, he decided to give up. The 3-month deadline was not over yet. He could not be reckless. He began to extract heavenly law celestial power. His goal was to change the magic energy in the Tianxia map into heavenly law celestial power. Heavenly law celestial power was more powerful than the power of the world. If he could use heavenly law celestial power as his normal battle power, his power would be explosive. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. In the dim world, lightning flashed and thunder roared. A lone peak stood in the middle of a massive lake, and the surrounding lake water surged like raging waves. A group of blood bats flew over and landed on the peak. There was a stone palace here, and an old tree stood in front of it, enduring the wind and rain. Xiao Hongjun walked up to the door of the stone palace and shouted, Wu Wang, get out here now. The heavenly saint is here, and you still want to wait for your death? Wu Wang. The peerless demon emperor from the northern wilderness region 110,000 years ago. He almost led the demon race to rule over the northern wilderness region. You can leave by yourself. I have my own ways. Great Emperor Wuwang's indifferent voice came, which infuriated Xiao Hongjun. She came to visit him out of goodwill, but he did not even open the door. She gritted her teeth and said, "The violet demon monarch's heart that you left in the mortal realm has been taken away by someone. It might be Zhou Xuanji. Let's go and take revenge." In the northern wilderness region, there were only a handful of people who had the ability to take the violet demon monarch's heart. The most likely one was Zhou Xuanji. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 449. Knowing that the violet demon monarch's heart had been snatched away, Great Emperor Wuwang did not get angry. Instead, he remained silent. Xiao Hongjun could not take it anymore and said angrily, "Do you despise me that much? Come out and meet me. Do you want to die?" Emperor Wuwang remained silent. Xiao Hongjun was so angry that she swung her palm at the door of the stone hall. The door shook violently, but she could not break it open. After venting for a while, Xiao Hongjun left angrily. After a long while, Emperor Wuwang's voice floated out. "It looks like I really should leave. What a pity that I can't participate in such an exciting era." 3 years had finally passed. Zhou Xuanji absorbed a lot of heavenly law celestial power, and his power grew tremendously. He came before the Daoist temple and asked, "Senior, is the Center God province safer than before? Will the great Emperor Dao Court and demonic emperor come back?" The old immortal's voice sounded, "If you can break through the barrier with the northern wilderness region, then go ahead and do it. Next will be the era of hundreds of clans competing. It's a rare opportunity to become a saint, so make good use of it." Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and bowed toward the Daoist temple. In a sense, this old immortal could be considered half a master to him. He called Bai Suan and prepared to leave. Xiao Chan followed up and shouted, "Don't think of leaving me behind." Now, she had changed into a clean white dress. Although she was not devastatingly beautiful, her appearance could be considered pretty, especially her temperament, which was youthful and lively like a child. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Isn't it better to stay here? It's dangerous to follow me." Xiao Chan curled her lips and said, "I want to. Old immortal chased me away 30 years ago. If it wasn't for you, how would I have the face to come back?" Zhou Xuanji heard him and could only give up. In the future, she would be a maidservant. Next, Zhou Xuanji prepared to find the divine cliff and help it recover. He then found a mountain to establish Emperor Sword Court's base in the Great Thousand World. It was not difficult to find a Dharma formation that connected to the mortal world. There was definitely one in the divine cliff. Now that the heavenly sage was in control of the Tao, it was time for the Emperor Sword Court to ascend. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that he was no longer important. If he had come 10 years later, would the heavenly saint have come on time? Would the divine cliff be able to escape this calamity? He shook his head. Everything had its own destiny. There were no ifs. From then on, he would see himself as a member of the divine cliff. As he strengthened the Emperor Sword Court, he would also support the divine cliff. All the way forward. Zhou Xuanji stopped occasionally to inquire about the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. Unfortunately, to most living beings in the vast thousand world, the 18 holy swords were just a fictional legend. Several years passed. Divine Cliff City had been rebuilt, but the surrounding mist had dissipated a lot. There were not many disciples on the streets, and the whole city was filled with a deathly aura. Inside the Cliff Master Hall, Yang Yutian and 2 elders were discussing sect matters. "Another mortal realm has been seized." Yang Yutian gritted his teeth and asked with an ugly expression. This was already the 6th mortal realm that had been seized. All the cultivators from the divine cliff who were stationed there had either been killed or chased away. At that very moment, the divine cliff was like a tiger that had fallen to the plains and was being bullied by dogs. A white-haired elder nodded and sighed. There are less than 10 true gods in the divine cliff, and less than 30 void extreme immortals. Each of them is guarding an area, and none of them can come back to support us. The other elder's expression was also ugly. Back then, the 36 envoys had all died in battle. Among the direct disciples, only Yang Yutian had survived. More than half of the core disciples had died, and the rest had been sent to various garrisons in the two realms. The three of them fell into silence, feeling the pressure. They did not want the divine cliff to perish in their hands. At this moment, a disciple shouted from outside the gate, "Cliff Master! Core disciple Zhou Xuanji is back." With this, Yang Yutian and the others were pleasantly surprised. Yang Yutian immediately cried out, "Invite him in." The two elders chatted excitedly. Zhou Xuanji is back. The divine cliff has not lost yet. He's a first-class great emperor. Now that the immortal gods are ruling the world, the divine cliff's opportunity is here. Yang Yutian was also excited, but he tried his best to remain calm. The divine cliff was in such dire straits because of Zhou Xuanji. After Zhou Xuanji disappeared, he almost broke down. Fortunately, this brat came back. Soon, the gate opened. Zhou Xuanji walked in with Xiao Chan, and Bai Suan was in his arms. Seeing that he came back unscathed, Yang Yutian and the others were completely relieved. Zhou Xuanji spoke first, "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. From today onwards, I will do my best to protect the divine cliff." These words almost made Yang Yutian and the others cry. Yang Yutian walked up quickly and grabbed his hands. "It's good that you are back. It's good that you are back," he said with a trembling voice. The divine cliff was in such dire straits, but Zhou Xuanji was still able to come back. He could not help but feel touched. He suddenly understood Han Shuzi's intention. His revered teacher was really good at judging people. Zhou Xuanji said, "I'm already a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal and can be considered a Void Extreme Immortal. Tell me, who was the one who bullied the divine cliff recently? As long as it's not a true god, I will kill him." Yang Yutian frowned and said, "Cultivate well. If there's anything you need, we will help you. The divine cliff needs your help, but not now." Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "If we don't act now, the divine cliff will only be bullied more and more. Since the calamity has only passed for a few years, we must show our might." All the demons were chased out of the Center God province. Under such circumstances, we should be like our predecessors and show our might. The all-evil yin-yang destruction and the holy light divine shadow sword appeared behind him at the same time, spinning in the air. Two extremely powerful auras exploded out, shaking the Cliff Lord Palace violently. All the disciples in the divine Cliff City felt their hearts tremble. Yang Yutian and the others opened their eyes wide and looked at the two Armageddon legendary swords in disbelief. Such a powerful divine weapon. "Okay. Elder Yuchuan, bring him to the teleportation point of the Wangwei realm. If a true god attacks, I will do it myself." Yang Yutian instructed with a deep voice, and an elder beside him agreed immediately. Zhou Xuanji pointed at Xiao Chan and said, "She's my maidservant. She saved my life before. Arrange for her to stay in my residence." After that, he handed Bai Suan to Xiao Chan before leaving with Elder Yuchuan. Looking at his back, Yang Yutian clenched his fists, and his blood boiled. "Revered teacher, the divine cliff will not fall because of this. We will surely soar," he mumbled to himself before arranging a place for Xiao Chan to stay. To the north of the divine cliff, above the boundless fog and layers of clouds, hundreds of powerful cultivators sat in the air, surrounding a long bridge. There was a teleportation gate on the bridge, which was guarded by two void extreme immortals. They were chatting and laughing. "The divine cliff has really fallen. Our sect doesn't even need to send out true gods, and they still don't dare to act. Of course. Although Yang Yutian is powerful, he belongs to the younger generation after all. If he were to act against us, the other sects and clans would take the opportunity to act. He has no choice but to compromise. At this moment, more than 10 top-tier factions were watching the divine cliff. Each faction had a true god. They were waiting for Yang Yutian to come alone and kill him. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 450. The faction that occupied the Wangwei realm was called the Eight-Fist Sect, and it had a few true gods. Before, they were so insignificant before the divine cliff. But now, they worked together with other factions and treated the divine cliff as their prey. The two void extreme immortals and hundreds of golden immortals dared to occupy this place. This showed how much they despised the divine cliff. They were not afraid of Yang Yutian because many powerful cultivators were waiting in the dark. The divine cliff was like a huge cake. First come, first served. Humph. A cold snort came. Zhou Xuanji came over on a river of swords with the all-evil yin-yang destruction in his right hand and the holy light divine shadow sword in his left. His black robe danced in the wind, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Elder Yuchuan was beside him and looked excited. I can finally fight back. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the Eight-Fist Sect cultivators got up and prepared for battle. The two void extreme immortals smiled in disdain. Zhou Xuanji said coldly, all of you, come here and die. Don't touch the portal. With this, the Eight-Fist Sect cultivators took out their enchanted artifacts and looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously. A void extreme immortal laughed in disdain. A 10th revolution golden immortal dares to be so arrogant? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you have a senior beside you? After that, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji first, followed by the other cultivators. Just when Elder Yuchuan was about to attack, Zhou Xuanji activated the world-destroying power of the all-evil yin-yang destruction and slashed with the sky-dominating divine sword soul. Boom! The sword flashed, and everyone closed their eyes instinctively. The void extreme immortal opened his eyes wide and slammed his palm. Shortly after, he and the golden immortal behind him were turned into ashes. The clouds were destroyed, and the sword chi swept across and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Silence. Elder Yuchuan was dumbfounded. The surviving cultivators from the Eight-Fist Sect were all stunned. Deathly silence. Brat. You are seeking death. The other void extreme immortal from the Eight-Fist Sect roared furiously. He disappeared on the spot and wanted to sneak up on Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stomped his right foot, and 30 legendary swords soared up. They glowed with silver radiance and revolved around him at high speed. Elder Yuchuan sensed an extremely powerful repulsive force coming toward him. He immediately recognized that it was Zhou Xuanji's power. He did not resist and moved a few hundred meters away from Zhou Xuanji. The void extreme immortal suddenly appeared behind Zhou Xuanji with a snake-like black sword in his hand. He was going to kill Zhou Xuanji with one slash. Puchi. Puchi. Puchi, silver light flashed, and he was instantly pierced by 30 divine swords. He was like a hedgehog, and blood sprayed across the sky. Zhou Xuanji did not look back but looked at the cultivators from the Eight-Fist Sect. His gaze scared the cultivators so much that they broke out in cold sweat and retreated one after another. How is this possible? The void extreme immortal of the Eight-Fist Sect was drenched in cold sweat. He had a ferocious look on his face. He wanted to bring down the black sword, but it was a pity that his magic power was being sucked away rapidly. The heavenly law's immortal energy was of a higher grade than his magic energy. He was completely defenseless against it. The 30 divine swords moved again and directly minced him into pieces, turning him into a bloody mist. The two void extreme celestials were as weak as mortals in front of him. With the two Armageddon legendary swords and sword sect immortal ghost weep, he could kill enemies of a higher stage. With his cultivation stage, 2 slashes could exhaust the heavenly law's immortal energy in his body. But he still had the Tianxia map, which stored abundant heavenly law's immortal energy. It was enough for him to fight for a long time. He charged toward the other cultivators from the Eight-Fist sect and started a massacre. The cultivators were so terrified that they fled in all directions. Elder Yuchuan was stupefied and could not come back to his senses for a long while. Why was a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal so powerful? He could not understand at all. Could this be the heaven-defying power of a first-class great emperor? No wonder those factions were willing to heavily injure the Divine Cliff and Dao Heaven sect just to kill Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji! You still dare to show up? A loud cry came. A 3,000-meter tall silhouette appeared in the horizon and charged toward Zhou Xuanji swiftly, stirring up clouds and mist. Heavenly Law True God. The stage above Void Extreme Immortal. Elder Yuchuan was only a Void Extreme Immortal. If not for the Divine Cliff being heavily injured, he would not have become an elder. Seeing the true God, his face turned pale with fright. Zhou Xuanji did not panic at all. He activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha straightaway. Stepping on the Sword Buddha's head, he flew up swiftly. He laughed proudly and said, "A mere true God dares to kill me? Even the malicious Buddha cannot kill me. Let alone you. If you dare to attack me, the existence behind me will not let you off. Neither will the malicious Buddha. The malicious Buddha and the demonic emperor still want to use me. Do you have the right to stand against them?" The true God was so frightened that he stopped in his tracks. His body was glowing with a radiance, and no one could see his expression clearly. But he had to believe Zhou Xuanji's words. Even Han Shuzi died in the hands of the malicious Buddha. How could Zhou Xuanji survive? Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly, "If you don't get lost, you and those scoundrels hiding in the dark will all die." He was filled with a murderous aura and released all of his aura, looking fearless. This made the Eight-Fist sect's true God even more uncertain. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword. The sky-dominating divine sword Sword Soul and Sword Chi swept out and clashed with the Eight-Fist sect's true God. The true God exploded instantly without causing any damage. He was shocked in his heart. A heavenly law true God was this powerful? Zhou Xuanji. You win. The Eight-Fist sect's true God snorted coldly and left. As for the other Eight-Fist sect cultivators, they were long gone. The Eight-Fist sect retreated. At the same time, the true gods hiding in the dark were also shocked. It was not that they were not smart enough, but the malicious Buddha's deterrence was too powerful. Even someone as powerful as Han Shuzi was killed. How could they fight against him? Elder Yuchuan came up to Zhou Xuanji excitedly. He wanted to say something, but Zhou Xuanji gave him a look, and he understood immediately. The two returned to the Cliff Lord Palace and told Yang Yutian about this. Yang Yutian sighed in amazement. A 10th Revolution Golden Immortal can kill 2 Void Extreme Immortals and hundreds of Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals so easily. This is too ridiculous. Not only that, but you also know how to bully others. I can sense that those true gods have retreated. I don't think the other factions need us to do anything. They will be scared away. Bully others? Zhou Xuanji was speechless. How could he say that? Next, Yang Yutian began gathering the core disciples to conquer the portals to the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji told him about the northern wilderness region, and Yang Yutian readily agreed. Emperor Sword Court was merely a faction in the northern wilderness region, and it was not a big deal for them to merge with the Divine Cliff. However, the Divine Cliff had been attacked, so they needed to create a new teleportation gate and buy world stones, which would take some time. Zhou Xuanji also asked Yang Yutian about the 18 divine swords and Xian Xianghua, and Yang Yutian readily agreed. That day, news of Zhou Xuanji's return spread throughout the Divine Cliff City. At first, the disciples were quite furious, but after hearing that Zhou Xuanji had repelled the various factions, their anger dissipated. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji sensed many hostile gazes. He was not angry. If it were him, he would feel displeased as well. Under Elder Yu Quan's lead, he returned to his original residence, which had yet to be destroyed. Fei Hai stood in front of the gate excitedly. When he saw Zhou Xuanji, he cried tears of joy and said with a trembling voice, "Senior, it's great that you are all right. You're finally back." Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 451. Seeing that Fei Hai was safe and sound, Zhou Xuanji was not pleasantly surprised but felt a little amazed. Several years had passed, and the people had changed. He then thought of Han Shuzi and Shi Shenzong. He nodded and said, "Get up. The divine cliff is in trouble. You don't have to serve me anymore. Cultivate well and become the backbone of the divine cliff." Fei Hai shook his head and said, "I can still serve you, and I will not delay my cultivation." Zhou Xuanji did not insist and walked into the residence. The servants in the mansion were still there. It was still the same people. Zhou Xuanji packed up and flew into the sky to continue extracting heavenly law celestial power. When he attacked the true god just now, he didn't manage to inflict any damage to the other party, causing him to feel a sense of crisis once more. He needed to accumulate more heavenly law immortal energy. In the next half a year, Zhou Xuanji did not leave the Divine Cliff City, and news of him returning to the Divine Cliff quickly spread. The demons were chased out, and Emperor Jundao was once again active in the eyes of the world. Now, Zhou Xuanji had also returned. Would the two newly advanced first-grade great sovereigns fight? In half a year, the Divine Cliff did not encounter any more attacks. Yang Yutian continued to recruit disciples. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 106 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, sword owner, you have obtained Intimidating Spirit, Bitter Sword, 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown. Zhou Xuanji, who was high up in the sky, was attracted by the sword spirit's voice. He opened his eyes, and the legendary sword's information appeared before him. Sword name, Ku Ti Sword Grade, Intimidating Spirit, Description, a wooden sword that contains Bodhi materials. Anyone struck by this sword will suffer the pain of being stabbed by thousands of blades and being devoured by hundreds of beasts. Not bad. Zhou Xuanji smiled and took out the 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown. The crown was golden in color and was 10 centimeters tall. 9 golden dragons were engraved on its surface, and they were very small. There were 3 golden needles attached to it, which could be used to tie one's hair. 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown. Not only can it increase the speed at which the host refines his magic power, it can also absorb the power of the sun. When it encounters a fatal attack, it will automatically counterattack the enemy. The sword spirit introduced, and Zhou Xuanji immediately put it on. After wearing the crown, his entire temperament suddenly changed, becoming even more divine and handsome. He continued to refine the heavenly law immortal energy and found at the rate at which he could refine it had indeed increased by a lot. Not bad. Zhou Xuanji's mood became joyful. At this moment, Yang Yutian transmitted a message to him, telling him to head to the Cliff Master Hall. He quickly arrived at the entrance of the Cliff Master Hall and strolled in. Apart from Yang Yutian, his previous direct disciples Wu Qiu and Lan Shangying were also present. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, "You're still alive?" He thought the two of them were already dead. Hearing this, Lan Shangying coldly harumphed, while Wu Qiu enthusiastically waved at him and revealed a bright smile. Yang Yutian laughed loudly and then closed the door. "I called you here because I have the whereabouts of the divine sword. The location is a little far, so I want junior brother and junior sister to accompany you. I have to watch over the divine cliff. I hope you can understand," Yang Yutian said. Zhou Xuanji heard him and his eyes brightened. He said, "I can go alone. Leave them here to guard the divine cliff." Lan Shangying curled her lips and said, "Are you afraid that we will snatch them from you?" Wuxia shook his head and said with a smile, "That place is an ancient site that the two of us discovered in the past. There are many restrictions inside, and many of our disciples died there. If we bring you there, it will save you a lot of trouble. Besides, don't you need someone to keep watch when you're retrieving the sacred sword?" Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Then I will trouble the two of you. But since you have been there before, why didn't you find the sacred sword? Could it be that something had happened?" Wuxia stopped smiling and said, "That ancient site is at the western end of the Center God province. 3 months ago, my informant there sent me a message saying that the Heavenly Hall and the Buddha Ghost sect discovered the ancient site. It was said that they forced the birth of a powerful sword. Even a 9th Revolution Golden Immortal could not control this sword. I guessed that the sword might be the divine sword. Now that the immortal gods control the Center God province, evil cultivators are no longer around. Why don't we go and take a look?" Zhou Xuanji was a little disappointed. So it was not accurate information. "Wait, the Buddha Ghost sect is not an evil cultivator?" he asked curiously. Yang Yutian replied, "Although they are ghost cultivators, the Buddha Ghost Emperor made great contributions to protect his descendants. The heavenly law recognizes them, and the immortal gods do not reject them." After that, the 4 of them discussed and decided to depart today. Zhou Xuanji, Wu Qiu, and Lan Shangying went back to make some arrangements before leaving the Divine Cliff together. Bai Suan and Xiao Chan wanted to follow but were rejected by Zhou Xuanji. This was a risky trip, and he did not want to bring along 2 burdens. Lan Shangying flew on a cloud, while Zhou Xuanji sat on the cloud and continued to extract heavenly law celestial power. Wu Qiu cultivated as well. Because he was close, he could sense the powerful ripples of heavenly law celestial power. He opened his eyes and asked in astonishment, "There's something wrong with your magic energy. Why does it feel like an immortal god?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and asked, "You've seen an immortal god before?" Wu Qiu nodded and began to tell him about his past. Back then, he was only a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. When he was traveling in the Center God province, he encountered an injured immortal. After saving the immortal, they became friends and spent some time together. He was very familiar with heavenly law celestial power. After that, they parted ways. Until today, Wu Qiu did not know where that immortal was, nor did he know why he was injured. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself and said, "That heavenly saint brought an immortal god to control the Center God province. What's his intention? Could it be related to your immortal friend's injury?" In the Center God province, immortal gods were still an illusory legend. Zhou Xuanji knew that the immortal gods came from the ancient immortal clans. This time, it was all thanks to the heavenly saint and the ancient immortal clans that he was able to escape. However, he always felt that there was a massive conspiracy behind this. If the immortal gods were so kind, they would have appeared long ago. Wu Qiu did not reply. He was also thinking about this. Ever since he witnessed the malicious Buddha's prowess, he had a strong desire for power. This time, he not only wanted to help Zhou Xuanji obtain the divine sword but also to obtain a serendipity for himself. Under the dark clouds, the entire mountain was filled with graves. There were countless of them. Behind a tombstone, a hand suddenly reached out from the soil. It was as dry as firewood and looked eerie. The soil opened up, and a skinny man climbed up. His clothes were corroded, and only strips of cloth were left. His hair was dry, and his eyes were lifeless. He rolled down from the soil and lay on the ground, panting heavily. He glanced over and saw the words on the tombstone. "My brother, M.O." The last 4 words were corroded by the wind and sand, but the 3 words at the bottom were still recognizable. Established by Emperor Xia. The skinny man stood up with difficulty and looked up at the dark clouds in the sky, trembling. Suddenly, he burst out laughing like a madman. "Ha ha ha ha, I'm alive again. All of you, wait for your deaths. I'm going to regain control of the Center God province. I'm the true sovereign." He laughed wildly. Strands of black chi floated out from the other tombstones and gathered on his body. His body grew fuller at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 452. The historical site that Wuxia was talking about was called the Nether Demon Stream. It was said that a long time ago, the demon race had once occupied the Center God province. The Nether Demon Stream was one of the demon race's territories, but it was destroyed by a powerhouse. It took a long time to travel from the Divine Cliff to the Nether Demon Stream. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji and the others did not encounter any danger. After the heavenly saint spoke, the demons all disappeared. The only strange thing was that the heavenly saints and immortal gods had not appeared yet. If not for the fact that some demon factions had been razed to the ground, the world would have thought that the immortal gods were joking. Zhou Xuanji asked Wuxia to help him find out where Xian Xianghua was, and Wuxia asked about her. Demonic cultivator? She might have already left the Center God province, Wuxia said with a frown. Wuxia frowned, which made Zhou Xuanji's heart sink. Lan Shangying said, there are no more demonic cultivators in the Center God province. Zhou Xuanji frowned and thought to himself. He was not too worried. Xian Xianghua had lived for over 10,000 years after all, and she was proficient in the celestial devil rebirth technique. She should be able to protect herself. Half a month later. The three of them were less than 10,000 kilometers away from the Nether Demon Stream. Lan Shangying stopped and landed on top of a mountain. Wuxia moved his hands, and golden mirrors of light flew out from his sleeves and hovered in front of them. The mirrors reflected the scene of the Nether Demon Stream from a different perspective. The surrounding 10,000 kilometers was a boundless mountain forest. Mountain ranges rose and fell, and the Nether Demon Stream was like a black line that divided the land into two. It was so deep that they could not see the bottom. They saw many cultivators moving about, and some even flew into the Nether Demon Stream. There were also people fighting. Wuxia coldly laughed and said, "It's so lively." Zhou Xuanji asked, "Are there any true gods here?" Wuxia shook his head and said, "The demonic factions in the Center God province have all retreated. The true gods of the various factions are busy fighting for territory. How can they have the time to come to the Nether Demon Stream?" Zhou Xuanji heard him and felt that it made sense. The serendipity in the Nether Demon Stream was not worth mentioning to true gods. As for that saint sword, he had not verified whether it was real or not. Since there are no true gods, should we act directly? Zhou Xuanji asked. He could already rival Void Extreme Immortals, and Lan Shangying and Wuxia were both Void Extreme Immortals. With the three of them working together, there was naturally nothing to fear. Wuxia raised his hand and said, "Don't be anxious, I think I saw someone from the Tang King clan." Tang King clan. After the northern wilderness region's war god Xiling ascended, he was recognized by the Tang King clan. He even married the Tang King clan's young mistress and married into the Tang King clan. To this day, war god Xiling was still an extremely powerful existence in the Center God province. He had become a true god long ago and was the pillar of the Tang King clan. Zhou Xuanji had a deep impression of war god Xiling. Back at Juadi Cliff, he had been killed by war god Xiling's heavenly law puppet. From what he sensed, war god Xiling was not inferior to Lu Wuji at all. Lan Shangying frowned and said, "The Tang King clan is tyrannical, it is not good to offend them. If the Tang King clan's disciples suffered a loss, the clan's powerhouses would stand up for them. Even the Divine Cliff at its peak would not dare to provoke the Tang King clan." Zhou Xuanji suddenly looked at a golden mirror of light. In the image, a group of heavenly guards were discussing something by the cliff, and he saw Emperor Yan of Zhou. Emperor Yan of Zhou was silent in the group, and he stood at the back. After ascending from the Mahayana realm and joining the heavenly palace, one could only start from the lowest rank of soldiers. Zhou Xuanji only took a glance and did not pay much attention to it. The fate between the two of them had come to an end. By helping the great Zhou Empire become stronger, he had already done enough for Emperor Yan of Zhou. After that, the three of them decided to enter the Nether Demon Stream from a place where there was no one around. The walls of the Nether Demon Stream were slippery and it was unknown where the water was coming from. As he flew down, he could feel a gust of cold wind blowing at him. The whistling sound of the wind sounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Wuxia transmitted his voice, "Do your best to hide your aura. Do not make a move before we find the holy sword." No one knew exactly how many people were in the Nether Demon Stream, so they had to be cautious. Zhou Xuanji was not too worried. The Tianxia map had already stored a massive amount of heavenly law celestial power. Even if he had to fight against many, he was not afraid. The Nether Demon Stream was not as deep as he had imagined it to be, only about 4,000 zhang deep. The mountain walls were filled with all kinds of crystal stones that gave off a faint glow, allowing them to see the path within 100 meters. They walked in a certain direction, using their inner sight to scan their surroundings. Along the way, they saw many corpses. Most of them had fallen to their deaths. There were even cultivators who had died not too long ago. Zhou Xuanji took out the ancient god sword and communicated with the 9 souls in his mind. Nether Demon Stream, hee, what a nostalgic place. Back then, I also came here before. Me too. You're all so young. I remember that the Nether Demon Stream was created by a junior from the demon race. We're all remnant souls, don't act cool. There are holy swords here. It's possible that the 18 holy swords have disappeared for countless years, so they might have fallen in a place like this. The 9 souls started to bicker. Some of them had been here before, which made things much more convenient for Zhou Xuanji. Wuxia and Lan Shangying continuously avoided the restrictions, and Zhou Xuanji would occasionally warn them, making them feel quite shocked. "You've been here before?" Wuxia could not help but ask. Zhou Xuanji could find restrictions that they did not know about. This was quite embarrassing. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I just have good eyesight." These words made Wuxia feel even more depressed. Soon, they encountered a group of cultivators. They immediately hid behind a massive boulder, concealing themselves, and their auras almost disappeared. The Tang King clan is too domineering. Despicable. Is that sword really a holy sword? It feels so strange. The Tang King clan's Tang Juetian has come, let's leave. Tang Juetian is a second-class great emperor, and now that he is a void extreme immortal, his strength is enough to sweep across the void extreme immortal realm. All of us together are not a match for him. Hearing the cultivators' discussions, Wu Qiu and Lan Shangying's expressions slightly changed. After the group of cultivators flew away, Wu Qiu gritted his teeth and said, "Tang Juetian has also come, this is not good news." Tang Juetian is one of the top geniuses in the Tang King clan. Even if all of us combined, we are not a match for him. Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows and asked, "Aren't you all geniuses of the divine cliff as well? Why are you so lacking in confidence?" Wu Qiu rolled his eyes at him. Lan Shangying explained, "Tang Juetian has a great emperor divine weapon and is extremely powerful. In the Great Thousand World, enchanted artifacts and magic treasures were not divided into many grades, but great emperor divine weapons reigned above most enchanted artifacts and magic treasures. Great emperor divine weapons were forged by heavenly law great emperors using great emperor fate. Once they were formed, they would be incredibly powerful and contain emperor's might." Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he said, "I'll go and meet him." He now had 2 Armageddon-grade swords. He wanted to see which one was stronger compared to the Great Emperor Divine Weapon. After saying this, he prepared to rush out. Wu Qiu held him back and said in a low voice, "Right now, the Divine Cliff is not on the same level as the Tang King clan at all. We can't fight them head-on, we need a plan to steal the Saint Sword without anyone knowing." Zhou Xuanji frowned. The strength of their faction was a big problem. He did not want to make more trouble for the Divine Cliff. Calm. Wonderful book house. After they left, Wuxia charged out and used the same method to attract the 7 disciples. There were only 13 disciples left in the palace. Zhou Xuanji put on his iron mask and charged forward with the soft velvety sword. He first absorbed all of the disciples' magic power, then stabbed them with his sword, causing them to fall to the ground powerlessly. In order to avoid falling out with the Tang King clan, he didn't take their lives. The Tang King clan was considered to be on the righteous path, but in the future, if they were to argue, their skills would be inferior and they would not have the face to speak. Soon, the 13 Tang King clan disciples powerlessly fell to the ground, looking at Zhou Xuanji furiously. They didn't even have the strength to speak. Zhou Xuanji came up to the stone coffin and glanced at the stone sword. This is the holy sword? Why is it so strange? Zhou Xuanji looked at the eye on the stone sword in confusion. He did not immediately stretch out his hand and instead started to converse with the 9 souls. Lu Wuji said in a low voice, "It shouldn't be a holy sword. I can sense soul ripples from within the sword." Oh. Could it be that there was an old demon hiding in the sword that pretended to be a holy sword to take over? Zhou Xuanji raised the ancient god's sword and slashed out. Clang! The stone sword shattered, and the eye's pupils constricted. It no longer spun around and even lost its expression. Zhou Xuanji's expression was calm, but the 9 souls exploded. Emperor Zhao cried out in shock, "My big brother, you killed it just like that? You haven't investigated it clearly yet." The other souls could not understand either. They had come from so far away, even if it wasn't a holy sword, it was still a gain. Zhou Xuanji said casually, "Apart from holy swords, I don't need any other swords." He now had close to 200 swords and did not need to worry about swords. After the stone sword shattered, there were no abnormal signs. Everything seemed incredibly calm. Zhou Xuanji stared at the eye and thought to himself. He suddenly stretched out his hand and used heavenly law immortal energy to dig out the eye from the air. He directly put the eye into the supreme storage. He had asked the sword spirit before, and if evil things entered the supreme storage, they would be suppressed. Of course, the supreme storage would reject living things. This eye was not alive. After doing all of this, Zhou Xuanji quickly left. He quickly found Wuxia and Lan Shangying. The 2 of them let go of the Tang King clan disciples, and the 3 of them quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Tang King clan disciples understood that this was a ploy to lure them away, so they did not give chase and returned to the palace. When they saw the stone sword shatter, they were all dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji and the others landed behind a massive boulder. Wuxia asked about the situation, and Zhou Xuanji answered truthfully. After hearing that he had destroyed the stone sword with a single strike, Wuxia said in pity, "Looks like it's not a holy sword. How could a true holy sword be so weak?" Lan Shangying nodded. They had come here for nothing. They started to plan their return. Zhou Xuanji said, "I want to challenge Tang Juetian. We'll only fight to determine victory and defeat, not to kill him. That shouldn't give the Tang King clan an excuse to attack, right?" Wuqia's eyes widened as he said, "Are you crazy?" Tang Juetian, who had a great emperor divine weapon, was someone that even he could not deal with. Did Zhou Xuanji really want to lose? Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "If the divine cliff wants to rise up, it needs fame. If I defeat Tang Juetian, will more people want to join the divine cliff?" Lan Shangying rolled her eyes at him and asked, "What if you lose?" Zhou Xuanji said confidently, "I won't lose." He wanted to test his true strength. Wuqiao and Lan Shangying could not dissuade him, so they could only allow him to challenge Tang Juetian. The 2 of them did not follow, in case they were recognized by the Tang King clan disciples. Zhou Xuanji took out legendary swords, which formed a river of swords. He stepped on the river and rose into the air, looking incredibly domineering. Seeing this, Wuqiao and Lan Shangying looked at each other and could see the shock in each other's eyes. What a powerful aura! On the ground, Tang Juetian was currently fighting with the great heaven god dynasty's Lu Tingjun. The two of them had powerful auras and were incredibly fast. They were like two rays of light madly clashing in the air, causing powerful gales to blow up the trees in the surrounding 1,000 kilometers. Many cultivators watched from afar. So powerful. Both of them are second-class great emperors. It's said that they fought before, but there was no clear victor. Ever since Emperor Jundao joined the great heaven god dynasty, Lu Tingjun has been overlooked. I never thought that he would be so powerful. Their strength is quite strong even among void extreme immortals. Looks like there's no hope for the Saint Sword now. The heavenly palace's people were also watching. Emperor Yan of Zhou looked at this incomparable battle, a look of admiration on his face. If he was this powerful, he would not have to work so hard for the heavenly palace. He suddenly thought of his son, Zhou Xuanji. He wondered what that boy's strength was now. His smile became bitter. They were father and son, but there was a gap between them that was even deeper than enemies. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 454. Tang Juetian continuously struck out with his palms. The wind from his palms was so strong that Lu Tingjun was unable to get close. Lu Tingjun was wearing black armor and a red cloak. He looked valiant and domineering. He held a red tasseled spear in his hand. The spear's blade was wide and rectangular. His expression was resolute. He held the long spear in his right hand and stabbed repeatedly. His left hand formed hand seals and cast different spells. Wind could increase his speed, water and fire could increase his power, and lightning was even more domineering. Tang Juetian didn't even take out his divine weapon, and easily received all of his attacks. Lu Tingjun, my cultivation base has improved, but you haven't. You are no longer a match for me. Tang Juetian laughed proudly, filled with confidence. In the past, he and Lu Tingjun were on the same level, but now, he had already left Lu Tingjun behind. Lu Tingjun was indifferent. His eyes were burning, and his aura gradually increased. Right now, he was in a very awkward situation. The favoritism he received from the great heaven god dynasty had decreased because of Emperor Jundao, and his reputation in the world had also been overshadowed by Emperor Jundao. Now that he was facing Tang Juetian, he was actually unable to gain the upper hand. Bang! An extremely powerful aura came from the horizon. Countless sword shadows turned into a desolate mountain and river, rushing over with unstoppable force. Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun subconsciously turned around to block. Countless sword shadows collided with them, bursting forth with dazzling light. Everyone looked over and saw Zhou Xuanji walking over on a river of swords. He had changed into white clothes and was not wearing the iron mask. The all-evil yin-yang destruction and the holy light godly shadow sword in his hands caused gusts of wind to swirl around him. The people from the heavenly palace were all moved. Zhou Xuanji's face had long since spread throughout the heavenly palace, and Emperor Yan of Zhou felt as if he had been struck by lightning. "Who are you?" Tang Juetian shouted loudly as he frowned. The sight of nearly 200 divine swords was truly spectacular. In the present age, there were not many people who liked to use so many swords. Most importantly, he could tell at a glance that Zhou Xuanji only had 10th revolution golden immortal cultivation. "Divine Cliff, Zhou Xuanji." Zhou Xuanji replied. Immediately, 50 legendary swords rose up, each giving off a powerful light as they spun around him at high speed. There was no pattern to them at all, and they were as wild as the wind. Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. With the support of heavenly law immortal energy, Zhou Xuanji's speed greatly increased, and he quickly came before Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun. 50 divine swords attacked them fiercely, catching them off guard. Tang Juetian immediately took out his great emperor's divine weapon. It was a large blade that was wrapped in raging flames. The blade took up a third of the entire blade, and there was a dragon's head at the tip of the blade, looking incredibly domineering. He slashed out with his saber, and the saber chi that was like a violent storm deflected more than 20 divine swords. Lu Tingjun was forced into a passive position. This scene frightened the spectators. As soon as Zhou Xuanji appeared, he suppressed Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun. Some cultivators with high cultivation bases were dumbfounded. A 10th revolution golden immortal was this powerful? As expected of a grade 1 great emperor. It seems like the rumors are true. Too strong. Crossing realms to fight, and 1 against 2. Between him and Emperor Jundao, who is stronger? How does he control so many swords? It feels like every sword's trajectory is different. They are all so strong. The cultivators began to discuss among themselves in shock. Emperor Yan of Zhou's expression was complicated. It had only been a few decades, and Zhou Xuanji had already reached such a level. If he had protected Lady Zhao Xian and her son back then, his current situation would be completely different. Lady Zhao Xian's beautiful face appeared in his mind. He then thought of the great Zhou's empress. In the end, even though he had ascended, he had not left anyone behind. There was only boundless loneliness accompanying him. Zhou Xuanji used sword sect immortal ghost weep and quickly injured Lu Tingjun. However, Tang Juetian was not injured at all. He stared at the great emperor's divine weapon in Tang Juetian's hand and inwardly felt quite shocked. He could sense danger coming from that great emperor's divine weapon. If he was not careful, that divine weapon could fatally attack him. As for Lu Tingjun, he did not place him in his eyes at all. He did not know how strong Void Extreme Immortals were, but the 2 people in front of him were at least above average Void Extreme Immortals. It had to be said that Heavenly Law Immortal Energy and Armageddon grade swords were indeed powerful. He felt much more confident and started to try to condense the 9 sword souls. Using 2 domineering divine abilities at the same time would be a great challenge to his soul's endurance. He had always tried and had succeeded before, but it was not stable enough. In battle, he could always challenge his limits. After each battle, he would become stronger because of this method of challenging his limits. It was just like training. Muscles used up a lot of energy, but after resting, they would become stronger. Clang! The 2 Armageddon grade swords slashed against the saber, giving off countless sparks. Tang Juetian was more powerful than Zhou Xuanji, but Zhou Xuanji had Heavenly Law Immortal Energy, so he was not at a disadvantage at all. Lu Tingjun was blocked by the 20 swords and could not get close to Zhou Xuanji at all. He did not dodge, under everyone's gazes. He had to gain face for himself and could not bring shame to the great heaven god dynasty. Tang Juetian started to fight with his full strength. The great emperor's divine weapon gave off a domineering aura, forcing Zhou Xuanji back with a saber strike. The 9 sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji continuously slashed out. Sword light flashed, but they were all blocked by Tang Juetian. Zhou Xuanji. You're indeed incredible. But don't think about defeating me. Tang Juetian wildly laughed. He looked very domineering, but he was inwardly panicking. If he was defeated by a 10th revolution golden immortal, he would lose a lot of face. Even if he returned to the clan, the elders would still punish him. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Zhou Xuanji's gaze became serious, and the other legendary swords also joined sword sect immortal weep. Close to 200 light swords crazily revolved around his body, and as soon as Tang Juetian got close, he was surrounded and attacked. The scene was incomparably spectacular, and the spectators felt their blood boil. Only the people from the heavenly palace had mixed feelings. They had watched Zhou Xuanji grow. Once upon a time, Zhou Xuanji was just an ordinary person in their eyes. Now, they could only look up. Emperor Yan of Zhou remained silent, his emotions complicated. In the distance, Wu Qiao and Lan Shangying were dumbfounded. How can he be so strong? Wu Qiao gulped and asked with a trembling voice. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to be more powerful than him, and not just by a little bit. Lan Xiangying didn't reply. She was also feeling very complicated. Back when he had gone to capture Shishenzong, Zhou Xuanji had not been very strong. How long had it been? Was this the talent of a first-class great emperor? Lu Tingjun completely gave up on close combat and cast divine abilities and spells from afar. His attacks were like a vast ocean that flowed endlessly, wave after wave. Zhou Xuanji relied on Sword Sect Immortal Weep to defend against his attacks, and at the same time, he resisted Tang Juetian. Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun did not realize that they had unknowingly teamed up. If it was in the past, they would definitely scoff. However, Zhou Xuanji's name was too great and his aura was too powerful, so they had no choice but to work together. In the spectators' eyes, Zhou Xuanji's aura and image were already superior to the other two. Is that all you have? Zhou Xuanji said as he coldly laughed. The World Fool Sword was activated, causing Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjuan's expressions to change. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.